I have no idea. Good evening, everyone. We'd like to get started, so I'll call tonight's regular council meeting to order, please. And looking to council for approval of the agenda with the inclusion of the new business supplementary information that is on the yellow pages. Moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Berger. All those in favor of the agenda? Opposed? Motion's carried. We have adoption of meeting minutes, please. September the 5th. What we could do is do them. Can we do these together in a block or separately? What would our corporate staff prefer? In a block? Okay. So we have the September 5th Committee of the Whole meeting minutes, September 11th Regular Council, September 18th Special Council, and October 2nd Special Council. So looking for a motion to adopt, please. Move adoption by Councillor Berger and seconded by Councillor Ray. Are there any questions or corrections from council on the minutes? Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship, I just had, going through the minutes, I just had a couple of questions.
Sure, go
on
ahead.
Page 26.
Can you just refer to which meeting that would be, Councillor Parkinson?
Page 26, September 11th. And it is just in regards to the BC Hydro grant application, because there was a deadline for that date. I was just wondering if it was looked into.
Do we know?
The CAO was directed to have the Director of Finance investigate the BC Hydro beautification grant opportunity.
Do we have an answer from staff?
Through your worship, no, we never bothered applying this time.
We never bothered?
Last time we looked into it, and it was it's a matching grant, so we would have to budget for something to put towards it. And last time we were looking at the underground utility lines, but it was very expensive.
Okay, thank you.
Other queries, Councillor Parkinson?
Nope, everything's good. Thank you.
Anything from anyone else? Seeing none, all in favor of adoption? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, so that brings us to our delegation this evening. We have Ms. Lures, Rezoning, OCP, and Agriculture. Welcome, Ms. Lures.
Point of order,
turn.
Your Honor. Oh, sorry, Your Honor. Your Worship.
Sorry?
The public hearing.
So I'm just going in the order here, and I see I don't see the public hearing.
The public hearing was moved with the approval of the agenda to immediately follow the adoption of the minutes.
So it has. I'm sorry, Ms. Lures. I'll call you back in just a second. There was I forgot my noted copy at home. So when we moved the agenda, there was an amendment, and that is that item 8.1, public hearing for 675, immediately follow adoption of the minutes, and also 11.2 immediately follows the public Q&A. So I just missed reading that out. So on that note, we will proceed to the public hearing then. For 7004 Melrick Place, I'll turn it over to staff, please. Thank you. Okay.
All right. Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. The application before you tonight is to rezone 7004 Melrick Place, a lot which lies between Melrick Place and Brailsford Place, from RU2 rural and RU4 rural residential to small lot single family residential. The applicant would like to subdivide to create single-family residential lots. The applicant has also applied to include the subject property into the sewer specified area. The applicant's draft concept plan is a general idea for subdivision. At this point in time, the applicant is proposing 4 fee simple lots and up to 15 bare land strata lots. 2 of the 4 fee simple lots would access off of Brailsford, and the remaining proposed lots would access onto Melrick. The applicant has proposed to meet the affordable housing contributions required within the OCP by providing secondary suites. At the June 12th council meeting, council did express a desire for affordable housing and was not favorable to prohibiting suites on any of the proposed lots. This is the applicant's proposed visitor parking layout for the lots that are proposed to gain access onto Melrick Place. Regardless of the final subdivision layout, it is recommended that at least 15 visitor parking spaces are provided within the proposed road. These 15 visitor parking spaces would be in addition to the number of parking spaces required in the zoning bylaw for a single-family dwelling and a suite. As per the proposed covenant, that's part of your package tonight. If a future lot owner decides to have a secondary suite within their single-family dwelling, the parking space for the suite must be constructed on the lot with the single-family dwelling and shall be in a location where it does not impede or cannot be impeded by another parking space. Staff is hoping that the proposed parking requirements will help alleviate parking issues for future lot owners, as well as the concerns for the presented from the surrounding neighborhood. With the applicant having addressed parking, the proposed rezoning to small lot single-family residential meets the OCP, as the proposal is providing infill and is creating contiguous development to an area that's densifying. Thank you, and the applicant is here tonight.
Okay, are there any questions to staff from members of council? So a question that I had is the affordable housing piece. So the suites are optional based on whether or not a future owner chooses to put one in. So if none of these houses end up with suites, then you could argue that there's no affordable housing, because it's not based on the applicant per se. The covenant was put in to address the parking down the road, but the affordable housing is an option based on whoever chooses to obtain a home. So I guess the question is, does that mean that affordable housing in this case has been met? Because at this point, we don't know if any of these will have secondary suites. Okay, that's just something I need to think about. Questions from anyone else on council? Okay, so I will proceed into the... Oh, Councillor Casper, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Through you to staff. When council discussed the parking issue, we actually passed a motion to adopt parking scheme number 4, and that's what we approved. And I don't see any of that parking scheme in the package. So was that not included?
Through your worship, there was 3 parking schemes that were provided at the last council meeting, and we had discussed parking scheme number 4 that wasn't provided at that time. It was just agreed upon, so this is the visual of what was agreed upon. I'm not here to debate with staff. I got the impression from our discussion and the motion that was passed that council accepted or adopted parking scheme number 4 that was submitted by the applicant at the night of the meeting, which wasn't included in the original package.
So I just want to lose sight of that proposal because that seemed to be acceptable to all of us at the time.
I didn't think it wasn't a separate, I think the applicant
Brought it
provided, it was one of the three options that were provided, and council took those and then added that the covenant be made in. Clarity from our corporate officer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I have pulled the minutes from the September 11th meeting when the parking proposals were presented, and the motion that council made was to authorize staff to enter in discussions with the applicant with respect to proposed parking scheme 4 in conjunction with the affordable housing requirements identified. So I believe the intent of the motion was to work with the applicant on something similar to proposal number 4 that was presented at the meeting.
And that's where that number 4 is what we're seeing in front of us here today. Okay. Does that answer your question? Does that provide what you need, Councillor Casper?
Well, it's not, the layout isn't what I recall, but if that's what the applicant agreed to do, well then I'm satisfied with that.
We can receive that confirmation in the public hearing. Other comments from members of council? Okay, so before we go into the public hearing, there's just this statement I need to read. This public hearing is being held pursuant to the Local Government Act. At this public hearing, any person who believes that their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaw will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the bylaw that are the subject of this hearing. Copies of written submissions received to date are available. It is important that all who speak at this hearing restrict their remarks to matters contained in the bylaw, and it is my responsibility as chair of this hearing to ensure that all remarks are so restricted. For those of you who wish to speak at the appropriate time, please commence your address to council by clearly stating your name and address. Then you may give us the benefit of your views concerning the proposed bylaw. Submissions must be received before or during the public hearing in order to be considered by council. Members of council may, if they so wish, ask questions of you following your presentation or submission. However, the main function of council members this evening is to listen to the views of the public. It is not the function of council at this public hearing to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with individual citizens. Everyone who deems his or her interest in property to be affected shall be given the opportunity to be heard at this hearing. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making his or her views known. Please note that this hearing forms part of tonight's regular council meeting and as such is being video recorded. Videos and their contents, including any personal information disclosed during the hearing, will be posted on the district's website. So on that note, I would like to call first time for any comments for the public hearing, please.
Ellen Lors, 5526 Souk Road. I believe in the OCP it says that there's supposed to be community gardens provided in every subdivision, and I don't see any of that in this proposal. I see a very small lot in a condensed area, which is outside of the downtown core. As an infill, I don't think this is a place for infill myself. And the idea with having one lot per suite doesn't seem to fly. If you look at all the other houses that have suites in them, you know there's at least 2 cars, and the same with the houses themselves. There's 3 cars usually. I don't think we can look at these just being single-family homes with just single families. There's children, could be teenagers, we don't know. So the parking spaces, the 15 visitor parking spaces, will certainly be used up by the people that own the homes. If you go down Happy Valley Road and in those new subdivisions there and you see what's happened in the small lots, you can't even get down the road one way. So I think we have to be very careful what we're doing here, and also if we're concerned about carbon dioxide and the greenhouse gases and all sort of thing, well, why are we making such small lots and paving things over and not allowing for any green space to be there, because that's part of using the carbon dioxide up. So I think we have to be a little more careful in what we're doing and adhere more to the OCP. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lures. Other comments from members of the public this evening? Sorry. If you could please turn on the microphone, please. Perfect, thank you.
Linda White, 6998 Melrick Place. I'm a little bit disappointed that Council is looking at the small lots regarding the area that it's in. I was hoping that although I'm not against the development, I was hoping that the lot size would be larger than what it is. It's a very high density. It would have been nice because of the surrounding areas are all larger lots. I'm not saying they should be as large as the surrounding ones, but it would have been nice to have done so. I do have some concerns regarding in the documents that I read prior to this. They said that they're going to be removing all of the, I'm not quite sure of the correct term, soil on that particular piece of land, that they were going to be digging it down. So I have several concerns about that. Number one, there is also stated in the package that there is a tree line on the eastern side of the property. So if they're going to be digging down, I guess it's quite a ways, 4 feet down to the bedrock. I'm concerned about the stability of the trees along that tree line. So are they going to be taking them out? If they're not going to be taking them out, who is going to be responsible for the care of these said trees, as because now their root systems will have been disturbed? If they're going to be putting rock back into that particular area, is it going to be flush with the adjoining properties? Namely, there's, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4 properties that it's going to be adjoining. So I want to know, are those, or is there going to be retaining walls put up, etc.? So I am asking if they are going to be taking the trees out along, for my personal, on Lot H, that they put in a solid fence from the lot lines right up to the back, because as the proposal stands now, there are, I believe, 4 lots adjacent to my piece of property. So it would be very advantageous to have one single fence instead of having 5 different fences from 5 different owners. So if they're going to be doing that, I really want a solid fence put up, or something that's there that's, from the lot line up to my lot line. And I think it would be better if it went all the way up, but I'm just speaking for myself. My other concern is that in the back portion of my property of Lot H, there is rock, and that rock is going to have to be blasted. I have lived in this property since 2002. We've put up with this construction, and it's not from, and I'm not saying anything about the current people who own this, but for 6 years. So 6 years we have put up with the blasting and the dust and the dirt, and I saw that this year that the people up in the townhouses were complaining of how much dust they've had. We've had this for 6 years. This summer it was so bad that you couldn't even have your windows open on a hot day. You could go out and you could just literally scoop the dust up. There was so much. So I have a concern that when they're clearing the property along there, how are they going to protect us as homeowners along there? How are they going to protect the dust that's going to come onto our homes? Other than it being done during a rainy period or whatever, the dust is inevitable. So I would like to put forward that that they would actually come and clean our houses. I have photographs of how much dust actually comes. If it was in your backyard, you would be extremely upset having to breathe in that on a 24/7 basis. And you're saying, oh, well, it's not 24/7, you have the weekends. They start at 7:30 in the morning, and they have been doing work on Saturdays as well. They have been very, the last owners of the property have been much better than the previous owners, but I am still concerned about this. I want to also know how much notice are they going to give us before they start digging away the earth next door? How much notice before they are actually doing the blasting? And I realize that's all, in their total package of how things actually go, how, different permits, et cetera, are passed along. So I realize that that's kind of a thing, but I was hoping that they would certainly give us, some time so that if any of us, and I know lots of people above me have animals, pets, et cetera, that the pets could make sure that they're inside and they're protected and, along those lines. As I say, I'm not against the division at all, and that the present company has done a tremendous job on the property that's adjacent to that, far better than everything I've seen in the last 6 years. So that part I'm pleased with, but I am really concerned about those items that I've brought up, and I'd like to know when I could expect an answer on those particular items.
Okay, let me see what I can find out. So just questions to staff. So in terms of the tree line and we'll sort of start from the beginning forward here, what does happen with things like fencing or preservation of trees, and if the trees collapse and the like, how does that get resolved? Actually, sorry, Ms. White, could you just turn off your microphone, please? You just get a weird background. Thank you.
In this particular case, there's a geotechnical covenant on the property. So the owner has to work closely with a geotechnical engineer to ensure that the soil and rock removal and rock placement is done in a safe manner. The applicant can best answer in regards to removing of the trees. But in regards to the fence, if there was to be a fence requirement, this would be the best time to do it. Fence requirements in our zoning bylaw are for multifamily developments at time of development permit, and we don't address single-family developments.
Okay, we'll have the applicant up at some point in this public hearing, so I'll get further answers at that time. Okay, thank you, Ms. White. Do we have other members of the public tonight that would like to speak on Melrick Place and the rezone? Okay. And sir, if you could please just turn on the microphone. Thank you.
Ed Burlando, 6995 Allwood Terrace. On the scheme that you see there, mine is the EXL SL14. So looking at that, lots 11, 10, 9, and 8, and part of 7 would be on my backyard. I've been a homeowner in this home since 1995. I've seen development come and go in the backyard for quite a while, and as Linda has said as well, I think that they've handled it better than they have in the past with some of the other owners. For right now, looking at this specifically, I'm really not happy with the size of the lots in the back, in that back section, because the concern I had came up tonight, just the fact that some of them could be more than single-family dwellings. They could have a secondary suite. Secondary suites would mean that, instead of having 5 properties that attached to mine, I'd have the equivalent of 10. I think that's outrageous. That's not what we develop this area for, I think. I think it's not meant to be that developed and into that many lots. I think that to have that many people in that small a space is ludicrous. It gives me no pleasure to see this. I expected development, and I have for years. I've been the strata president for our strata 3338 for ongoing the whole time that I've been there, I think, except for minus 2 years. And I've always said to people, they've always said, what's going on, Ed? And I said, I've always said, they're going to develop eventually, so you can expect it. But I would assume it's going to be developed in a proper manner. Concerns, other than the fact that the amount of lots that you see is, like I said, just ludicrous. The rock issue. The rock issue is a very large issue for me. I've got a huge rock in my backyard that basically runs right to the edge of my deck. And that rock is attached well into lots 11 and 10. They do any blasting back there, it's going to shake my deck, my house, my whole well-being. That's a very major concern because it's a huge piece of granite, or whatever the rock is. It's a huge piece of rock. The tree line that you see there along the property line there is definitely set with trees. I know that on 10 and 11 there's major growth of blackberry bushes and different trees that have not been planted there, just regular things. My concern would be with soil removal, as Linda had mentioned. With the blasting, first of all, with the dust. The dust has been incredibly bad at my house as well. I could say that the issues are ones that affect me in a way that I know it affects others as far as breathing and things, but it's the fact that it's a cleaning job that is way more than what's expected to have right next door. It's like living next door to a soil plant. As far as the soil going out, I think that's going to take a lot of soil away from that area, and I can't see how they're not going to be able to take all the soil away. That's damaging soil. If you look at the lots that are up on 12 and 13, the previous owner had large oil tanks and diesel tanks and things to run his equipment. So can we ensure that all the diesel fuel or other fuels that are up there didn't seep into the soils there? I don't know. And that's a lot of soil to be taken out. I think that to scrape it right down to the rock is going to be detrimental to that. As far as my property itself, like I said, I've been there since '95, and I've always believed there would be development behind me, but this is going to have a huge impact on my home and the quality of my life. This is not what I see as something that Souk should be doing in a small area like this far away from the downtown core. It's been mentioned already before that it's out of the OCP plan, and that's a concern. The final concern would be the amount of cars in that small area. To say that each lot, I think it was said that each lot would have to have 2 spaces for 2 cars on each lot. Is that correct, Worship?
It would be 2 cars and then the covenant for extra parking if there's a suite.
Right, okay, yeah. Thank you. So, looking at that, you're looking at, 30 cars in a small area plus the covenant of the other 15. That's 45 cars possible in that one area. That road right now, the way it is, that it's set up off of Melrick, or off of Rudd, I apologize, and Melrick there, I can't imagine how they're going to widen that road enough to make it suitable to have cars go up and down that area. Living on Allwood Terrace, I've been, as I say, part of the strata, and we've been trying to get the Allwood Terrace taken over by the city, and the biggest concern has always been, or has said to be, that the road is too narrow for fire trucks to come up. When I first lived there, the fire trucks used to come up and make the circle. They'd make it by backing up and doing a 3-point turn to get around, to get the food at the Christmas hamper time and everything else, but now they don't even come up that way. So how are they expecting fire trucks to get up in this area safely with any cars or anything else? And that's a concern of mine, especially because they show a road width of 6 meters, I believe. How is 6 meters where there's parking in a real situation for fire trucks to get up? And if a house is on fire behind my house, what's my concern? My house going up as well. This area it's just not well planned as far as I'm concerned. Half the amount of lots would be essential, I think, and that's really what has to happen. I think it's just the number is just too huge. As far as the fence line all the way up, I think that the point being, if I've got 5 different lots behind me that are attached to my property, I'd hate to see 5 different types of fencing. So I think that in this case, from staff, they were saying that this is the time to propose it. I think that having the plan state that the fencing is taken care of in a consistent manner all the way up through that area makes more sense than having, 5 different types of fencing, and not knowing when the fencing is going to go up in some cases because an owner's not there yet, or maybe a house isn't built yet. So I think that's all I can say, and I appreciate the time of the council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Burlando. May I call on any members of the public for the first time, please, if there's any first-time speakers on this? Thank you.
Patty Van Arendonk, 2123 Melrick Place. So we're right at the corner of this development. So one of the big concerns for us is taking all this soil away and all the blasting, and once again we're dealing with water. We've had all of this go through with Stone Ridge and now with the Winfield stuff. You can't take all that soil away and not be, down the road, all this is, impacting everyone all the way down to Grant, really. So this, I don't know. It just doesn't seem well thought out from a developer's point of view. I don't know. And then the one lot right at the end, right on Melrick, is hog fuel. Is that the right phrase? Hog fuel? So it's sinking. It has been sinking ever since we moved here in 2006. So I don't know. There are a lot of issues there, and I know the geotechnical people are supposed to be looking into this, but it's a serious concern. And I agree with the others. Do we need to shoehorn so many houses into this area? We have larger lots, and you don't have to have it as large as ours, but maybe not quite this tight. Too many people, too many cars, and the parking, even with the 15 extra spots, it's just going to be, and I don't look forward to anybody trying to get up there with a fire truck. So that was my concern.
Thank you very much. Do I have other first-time speakers? 7004 Melrick Place. Call for a second time. Would you? Yep.
Thank you. I forgot to mention when I was there, I don't know if any of you have ever been around when they are doing the removal of the rocks and the blasting and having the excavators around. I don't know if anybody here in council has encountered that. It is the most frustrating thing you can ever imagine, having that done all day long in your home where you can't have your windows open and you hear that noise all day long. It has got to the point where I've been in tears some days because it is so noisy, so debilitating. I understand that they have to do it because of the geotechnical thing that has to happen. However, it would just be so nice if they didn't have to do it, if they could do it in a very quick, timely fashion rather than dragging it out over, and I don't know what their expectations are, over an extended period of time, because it really is, you just cannot imagine, if any of you have been in that area where they are chipping away like this, and you hear this all day long, doesn't matter what you're doing, and this is annoying as it is here. Imagine this happening like this all day long in your neighborhood. You can't put enough noise on to dampen that sound at all. And the actual construction isn't the problem. It is the excavation that is really, really detrimental to everybody living in that area. And I also do want to say I am concerned about the amount of traffic that will cause on the road as well. It's a very sharp corner there, and when you come in from Larkspur and you turn onto Maple Avenue South and then on to Melrick Place, there's some really sharp corners in there, and so I do have a concern that for this area it would just be nice if the lots were just a little bit larger. Like I say, I don't expect them to be as large as the surrounding area, but perhaps maybe not as small as they are now. Thank you for.
Okay, so call again for second time speakers. Okay.
Thank you, Worship. Ed Berlando, 6995 Allwood Terrace. Question through you to the developer. Once the developer speaks, I think one thing. The elevations, are they going to change considerably between lots, they're going to change considerably between lots 3 and lot 7, and how much of the blasting in that area is going to occur? I don't know specifically off the top of my head because I haven't measured it, but I can tell you between lots 3 or lots 2 and 7, there's an elevation of probably, if I'm 6 foot tall, there's got to be at least 8-10 feet at least, that an elevation increase there. And then there's a second elevation increase between lots 8 and 11. And I'm just wondering how much of that is going to be accounted for. Is it going to be blasting it down so that there's more level lots? Are they going to be building up on top of rock? What are they going to be doing with that? The second question I've got is through you, Worship, is to the fire chief, and just to understand from the fire department's point of view, is this allotment of 6 meters going to be enough for them to get in and out of there in a timely manner if it's full of traffic when with all of these other parking structures that are, or parking spaces, pardon me, are attached to the covenant?
Okay. I believe with part of the layout, it was having that parking would be prohibited in front of all of the lots, and that it would be marked clearly that it is a fire lane. So that way, because that was a concern that council expressed at the time, is that if there were street parking, that you wouldn't be able to achieve any access. So may I just have confirmation on the fire egress, and also that the fire lane would be put into place there, because I believe that was the conversation at the time.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through the chair, one of the previous meetings we discussed with the parking plan, the concerns as far as the optimal setup. That would be, a good measure for the fire department to be able to get in there, and that is correct, that the fire lane on the one side was recommended so we could get in properly. Obviously, we would conduct some pre-incident planning to make sure that appropriate apparatus would be going in there. Our engine one has a shorter wheelbase, and we can make the turn at the end. It's one of our few engines, because it's a custom designed one that's able to, turn in a shorter radius like that. We also discussed the widths as well, making sure that we had adequate widths, because I did note concerns in other neighborhoods where, if there's parking on both sides, we can't get out of the doors of the engine. So that was addressed in that previous meeting. So
through the worship, the chair, so the 6 meter setback is going to be enough for the fire trucks to get through?
If I may just have confirmation, please.
Yeah, through Your Worship, we discussed that with the Director of Development Services. We looked at this file and we did an actual measurement with our engine, and we made sure that the setbacks that were set in there would be adequate, that we could still get out with the doors open.
Thank you, Chief. Okay.
Thank you, Worship.
Okay. Thank you. I'd like to call up, is there anyone for a second time? And then I would like to hear from the applicant. Seeing that there's no other public, there is still a third, I'll still make a third call, but if I could invite the applicant forward, please. Thank you for attending this evening. There has been some concerns expressed from the neighbors in that surrounding area, so I'm just wondering if you could please comment on some of the items.
Sure, where do you want me to start?
You just need to lean forward a bit into the microphone.
Well, Michael Volk, 4923 Townsend Drive. And sure, I could start with the blasting, I guess. The blasting on the site that we're building now next door is quite extreme. I mean, the shots that we're taking are large shots. The blasting that would be done on this site would be like quite a bit smaller, because obviously we're a lot closer to homes. and the blasting contractor will have surveys done of all of the homes before the blasting starts, and they have insurance, and it's regular business for them. So I mean, I can't comment too much on the proximity. I guess some of the homes are close, but it certainly won't be as severe as the blasting that we're doing up at the top of the hill.
Do you have a sense of the timeline of the blasting?
Well, it's a pretty small area relative to, I mean, it's nothing like what we're doing up the hill, and it would probably be, a week or two, probably 2 weeks, I would imagine.
Do you expect that the elevations in the site will change?
Well, the elevations will definitely change, but we'll obviously try to, marry up. I need some water here. We'll try to marry up the elevations of our site with the site behind us, and it's just normal practice, and make the changes between the two sites as consistent as possible.
So this whole area would be relatively level?
Yes.
Okay, through the whole way? Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, level, it's all on an angle down, but it would match up with the homes behind as we go down the hill.
Okay, have you thought about fencing at all?
No, I haven't given it much thought.
Okay.
But we're just at the rezoning process right now. I haven't got design drawings yet, for instance, as far as cuts and fills and elevations. I just know that from looking at the property and the way it marries up to the property behind, that we will be able to match the elevations fairly consistently. As one gentleman said, there is a large rock area in the middle of the site, and that will have to be addressed and dealt with, and that's why I'll need some drawings.
Okay, do you have anything else you'd like to share? Any comment that you'd like to make, or anything based on comments?
Well, I mean, the
from
parking,
public?
I understand the parking issue, and obviously if there's suites in the homes, we're going to have that extra spot. I did notice on one of the road profiles that Suk has that it talked about a 2-to-1 parking. I haven't seen a bylaw, but I have seen 2-to-1 parking, meaning, or 1-to-2 rather, whereas for every, 2-to-1, so with every 2 houses there's 1 parking spot, and I know that this would exceed that, and I promised Tara that I wouldn't bring it up, but we are working with the neighbor next door and considering, and this will be dealt with on another application, but we are considering doing something with the piece below, which would widen the road, and that'll be dealt with in another application. It has nothing to do with this one, but that would essentially reduce the narrow road profile, so that if it could be a public road halfway up, I think that would improve things as well. So we're looking.
But at this point, we don't have that information,
that,
so it's just what we have in front of us.
We're working with staff, and I've been working with the neighbors, and so I'll just leave that at that. As far as fencing, I'm open to working with you guys on suggestions on fencing. That sounds like a reasonable request.
Well, it's just when you have an existing neighborhood and then you have 4 new neighbors coming in, it is left up to neighbors to work out where fence lines go. Somebody incoming may not have the means or the desire to put up a fence, so then you would have, if you're backing onto 4, you could have 2 or 1 or 3 of those neighbors put in a fence. Everyone's going to put in a fence of their choosing. If the neighbors don't like where the fence go, they'll put it all on their property. So then the neighbor that butts onto all these lands does look at an assortment of fences.
Yeah, well, the only problem I have with fencing is I don't like fencing. I do like hedges. Hedges are attractive, and everybody's talking about the lack of trees. I'd be willing to say that we'll run a cedar hedge the whole way up the side of the property to separate the 2 properties. And then if somebody wants to put up a fence to delineate the land to stop animals, pets, you could put up a chain link fence.
But the animals would still go through the fence.
No, but not what I'm saying is to separate the properties, I'd rather spend the money on a cedar hedge. It just takes about 2 years for a cedar hedge to take, and then it's a solid wall if it's looked after. If it has to be fencing, fine, but I just think it's far more attractive to do a nice cedar hedge.
So the question I have to staff is, if a fence goes in, like who looks after that? Who waters it? Who fertilizes it? Who takes that on?
Your Worship, our existing bylaws don't allow us to demand any kind of demarcation as a fence or shrubbery as described. So if somebody was to put a fence up or to put shrubbery up, it would be up to the lot owner to maintain, water the shrub, and repair the fence if damaged.
Okay.
I mean, I'll say I'm fine with putting up a fence if everybody wants a fence.
Okay.
I just prefer hedges is all.
Yeah,
But
no, we
it's
can.
It's not a money thing. I don't. Either way, it's fine with me. I'm more than willing to volunteer a fence.
Okay. Any questions from members of council at this point to the applicant? And then just in terms of my comment on affordable housing, knowing that it's an optional to build a suite or not, so if none of these choose to put in a suite, how would affordable housing be met in the development?
Well, I guess it wouldn't, but realistically, I've kind of thought of this project as being affordable housing from the start. I mean, these homes, the goal is that they will be affordable. I understand that they're not something that a person like a student can afford, obviously, but there'll definitely be more affordable homes or smaller lots, so it's less money to develop the land per lot, and making them the more affordable, certainly, than the Viewpoint Estates development that we're doing next door. This would be the more affordable component. As far as people building suites or not building suites, I think the chance of doing 17 or 19 lots, whatever it is, without any suites is about zero. I think that consistently at least half of the new homes that are built these days, at least half, probably more like 80%, have suites. Because these lots are a bit tighter, I think you'll get some retired folks and people that are, we don't want the suite, we're fine. But quite often, even in those applications, your retired couple will go in and they'll have a bachelor suite above the garage or something like that, with the thought of maybe having someone that could help out in later years. So quite often that ends up being a bachelor suite above the garage or something like that. So I would suggest that I'd be shocked if you didn't have 10.
I guess just to add to that, though, like with the market being as it is, though, would you not just have a realtor sell the units for as much as the market will?
Oh, absolutely.
So let's say right now you think it would sell for 400, but in the market it's going to go for whatever the realtor or the agent can choose to get, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying that these are $199,000 homes, but they're certainly going to be more affordable compared to anything else that we're doing in the area.
Okay. Okay.
But as far as, let me be clear, if you guys want to have a fence, sure, I think it's a reasonable request. I don't want it to be one of those concrete highway fences, but I think a fence is reasonable, and I'd rather do a hedge, but a fence is fine.
Okay, we'll take that back to council, but thank you for that. Okay, thank you, Mr. Bull. Thank you. Okay, so I'll just call out for a third time if there's any comments from members of the public, please.
Eleanor, 5526 Soup Road. It's interesting to note here that the developer will be taking all the soil off, and when you do that, it just totally changes the water, where the water goes, how fast it goes, and what is happening with that soil. Where's it going? Is it coming back? Many of the subdivisions, the new subdivisions that are built, be they Sun River or be they French Road North, because of where I am and because of people coming in and talking gardens and things, the biggest frustration is when they go in their backyard and they want to plant a tree, and a hedge wouldn't grow there because there's no soil. They can't even get a shovel in because it's blasted rock underneath and an inch of soil. They can't even take a lawnmower across it because the blades get all chopped up. So I think we have to be a little more careful how things are being done. I mean, there's going to be rock blasted here. Where's the soil going to be? How is this going to affect the neighbors? How's it going to affect all the properties? How's it going to affect the water? Where's the water go? How does it get filtered? I mean, we're supposed to be taking care of our environment, and we're supposed to be careful what we do in our environment. And I think there needs to be a little more discussion on this before anything further goes ahead. And again, the OCP states very clearly that there should be an area for growing food for those who want to. It's not making anybody do it, but for those who want to. And also, the environment is what we should be caring about mostly, and removing the soil and just leaving bare rock. how are people supposed to grow? Then you have to use more water because there's no soil there to hold it. So people are using more water to water the soil. So we're not being very, careful of our environment by allowing this kind of thing to happen. We need to be cognizant of that.
Thank you, Ms. Lors. Just to staff, where does the soil and rock go? And what happens if there's mass rains and water and drainage and the like?
Your Worship, we don't have a bylaw that prohibits people from moving soil on and off their property. We do have a requirement for them getting a permit. They need to tell us where soil is coming from or where soil is going. As part of the subdivision activity, if the zoning is successful, we will require a grading plan, which will show the ultimate grade of all the lots, and also an extensive drainage plan showing where the stormwater runoff is intended to go. All that still needs to be assessed during the subdivision process.
Okay, thank you. Call for another time or third and final time for submissions. If you could please come forward, please. Sure, yeah. And yourself, yeah.
Hello again, Your Worship. I just wanted to answer the soil question. I don't know where this came from that we're taking out all the soil and not bringing any soil back. There is a peat bog at the bottom of the property that we had a geotech look at, and we dug into it. It's fairly deep, much like the other peat bog that we filled that was down at the bottom of our other site. And what happened in this particular case was whoever was stumping the property back in the day, they just filled a swamp with all the shavings of the logs they ground up. So that's what we dug out next door, and that's probably what we'll end up doing again. But it doesn't mean that we're removing all the soil and never bringing it back. And when I suggested a hedge, it would be shot rock that drains very well, and then you put 3 feet of soil on top of it, and it's great for cedar trees or whatever kind of trees. They grow very well in that environment. So we will be bringing the soil back. You just strip it down to rock and then build off of it. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Volk. Call for a final time for submissions from the public.
In reference to the hedge or the fence that's put up, my only concern, either would be fine, but if there's the hedge that's put up, I do have the concern that if the bog material is taken away, there isn't a lot of material for anything to grow in there. So that a solid fence line all the way up would be probably a better thing, and I was pleased that the developer was willing to even consider that, so I appreciate that. But I really would like to see something put all the way up. Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback.
Sorry, Ed Berlando, 6995 Allwood Terrace. Through the chair, my apologies for asking this question, but with this reading here, has the lot size been decided as approved?
That still comes through the subdivision process. All that council is doing is approving the zone, which would allow this particular use or that type of density. And then, as we heard from our Director of Development Services, as they work out the drainage, I think that's when the lot lines and how many and the like get completely confirmed. Would that be a reasonable answer?
Yes, Your Worship. Through the design criteria and the lot grading requirements, et cetera, there may be a need to reconfigure the lots so they're not so rectangular. There may be even a point in time when geotechnical report, et cetera, and the drainage is dealt with. There may not even be a capability of getting that number of lots. However, what council is looking at, as you just stated, is they're looking at the density at this point in time. Whether it's achievable is something we have to deal with at the time of subdivision.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that. With the second question would be, with the lot sizes the way they are now, what would it have been if the if the application was denied and they'd have to build on this lot according to what the original lot sizes were supposed to be for that type of area. Pardon me.
There was rural residential, rural RU2 and rural residential RU4. I'll just have our planner answer that. Thank you.
Through your worship, the minimum lot size for subdivision in the RU2 zone is 4 hectares. So subdivision wouldn't be possible on this lot under that zone, and that's the same with RU4. Only a small portion is RU4, and it's 1 hectare.
Okay. So. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I think that'll be it for tonight. Thank you. I appreciate your time. Thank you all.
Thank you. So just as we approach the end of the hearing, I'd like to call for a final time for any comments from members of the public this evening on the rezoning of 7004 Melrick Place. Nothing final. Okay, so I'll now officially close the public hearing and would then like to turn this back to council. So council, we have had a lot of conversation about this in the past, just about dealing with the parking. We've heard further comments about affordable housing. We've heard from the neighbors about their concerns with the density, whether it's consistent with the OCP, the rocks and blasting, the dust, the mitigation. We've received answers from staff on this. I'd like to hear from any of you of your concerns or comments on third reading, please, or what you would like to do going forward. We've heard about the fencing. I think that's sort of a reasonable comment, especially coming from existing neighbors and then backing on to several. The developer or the applicant has made an offer to do something about that. So, thoughts from council. Councillor Parkinson.
Through you, Your Worship, this is more of a statement, I guess, because I'm in agreement with the residents of the neighborhood. I think that the traffic will definitely change the dynamics of their neighborhood. There will be far too many vehicles for the amount of houses that are there. As the mayor stated, there is no guarantee that there will be affordable housing there, and that's why we look for the density, is so that we can create affordable housing for people who live here. But if we have no guarantee that there is going to be any, then there is not a real necessity to have such density in an area, so that it could be, the lots could be a little bit bigger so that there's not as many houses there, so it doesn't affect the area with all the blasting. The fencing is a concern for the people. I can understand from looking at the diagrams and going up there that it would cause a problem, and I would think that fencing would probably be better, I would think, so that you don't have to really care for the trees and everything, depending on how far back they are from your property line. I know that I've had a couple of people come to me, even just from Grant Road, with their concerns of the blasting, and they're hearing the beep, beep, beep of all the trucks going back and forth constantly all day long. There's a dust concern, and that is really bad for health issues as well. And I would like to see more of a community atmosphere there, as one of the speakers stated, that there should be a community garden or something there. I think that would be for the benefit of the area as well. Thank you.
Other comments from councillors? Do you want one final thought, Councillor Parkinson? Go ahead.
And just to confirm, when I've read all the papers, it states that there is either 17 houses going to be there, or there's going to be 18, plus the 2 fee simple lots there. Do we know actually how many houses are going to be there? Is it 17 or 18? Or that hasn't been decided yet?
Through your worship, no, we don't, and it won't be until subdivision application, when all those further studies come forth, that the exact number of houses will be known.
Thank you. And the last thing was for the parking stalls. So we have the 15 guest parking stalls. We have 2 per household, and so there'll be 49 parking stalls on this property for all the cars. so that if they actually put in suites, would the people be actually using the visitors' parking spots? Because I know this has happened in other areas, is what happens. So, but there'll be something up stating that they can't do that, right?
There's what has
Thank
been
you.
agreed to was that there be a covenant so that if a house was to put in a suite, then they would be required to put suite parking on that particular lot. So it's only, I suppose, if there's more than one vehicle for that suite or visitors visiting both house and suite that would use the visitor parking. Councillor Pearson?
Yes, thank you. And I'd like to acknowledge all the people that spoke tonight and how I feel for them. And this development has been going on for a long time, and a lot of things beyond the control of a lot of people, including the market. If all things would have been better, this subdivision would be completely finished and all built out by now, and you wouldn't be listening to beep, beep, beep and crash, crash, crash and things like that. What I was encouraged to hear is that this developer, the newest developer, is a little bit more willing and a little bit more able to work with the people. I would like to ask the developer, I guess, and he's already gone, but is the cooperation? Oh, okay, sorry. About the dust and the noise. I think we talked about this 2 developers ago, because this property we're talking about was actually rezoned once before, and then it was downzoned at the request of the owner because he didn't want to participate with...
Sorry, Mr. Volk, you need to sit down. At this point, the public hearing is closed, so
Okay. Sorry,
the comments from council need to be directed to me, and then I can direct them to staff.
Thank you. So it's encouraging to hear that at least the developer is willing to work with the neighbors, and I've met actually some of the people who spoke tonight on their own properties way back, and we talked about having a potential dust fence or something. I don't know what's available to do up there. They have these big screens some places that they can do that does prevent dust. This is an unfortunate circumstance, but yet the market now has changed, so there's a lot of push to try and get this done. It's a massive project on the hillside, and I heard talk about agricultural land and things going missing. This is the exact right place where we're protecting agricultural land by using this development, because we're developing it on rock where it's not being used. So the other application it's a trade-off, and I appreciate the drainage and all those things, but developing up on this rock is part of contiguous development, and it is infill. We have the sewer system in place for this, so there's a lot of things that have lined up to make this the right place to develop, and yet we've got to be cognizant of some of the things. The questions that got asked tonight by public were also asked by council. The parking issues, the traffic issues, all of those things. So I'm cognizant of the fact that there's stress in the neighborhood. So I just want to say that.
Can I just get a comment back from staff on dust mitigation? How can that be achieved?
Your Worship, we currently don't have a bylaw that, for lack of better terminology, controls dust. It's up to a good neighbor to control it. I have been in contact with the applicant several times and his agent several times in the last 4 or 5 months with regards to this. There has been attempts, and I think more can be done to control the dust. I know that in the summer months, it was, particularly this summer, because it was so dry, it was a little difficult. But there are ways to mitigate it. But the proponent has to be a little more conscious of what's happening out there.
So in this case, if this rezoning were to go ahead and the subdivision did move forward, then residents impacted this could phone the district office, and then our staff then would pass those comments on and give those complaints to the developer. But if the developer chooses, well, this is the best I can do, then that's the way it is for the residents.
Yeah, as I said, it's up to the developer to be a good, conscious neighbor with regards to the issues. The blasting is a little more difficult. The blasters are provincially regulated. There's time frames and charges that they have to deal with. But the dust, as I said, if somebody really wants to control it and be a good neighbor, they know how to do it.
Anything further, Councillor Pearson? Other comments from members of council? Councillor Berger?
Yes, thank you. Through you to staff, I'm just wondering, I'm reading through the report here, and there's been lots of mention of a geotechnical study. One study was required before the public hearing, and the report is here, and so it's great that we have that in front of us. But I guess my question, again, through you to staff, would be at the time of subdivision, that's when we go in depth with the geotechnical study, with the drainage study, any covenants that may need to be in addition to the covenant that's already on it as far as geotechnical. And then it was mentioned by one of the speakers today that there could be possible contaminated soil. So all of that will take place at time of subdivision, is that correct?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Berger, that's correct. The more in-depth studies will be done at that time, and there'll be a lot grading plan that will be done first, and in the fallout from the lot grading plan, we'll have the geotech, we'll have the drainage, and the comment tonight, there will also be a required contaminated site assessment as well. Detailed.
Okay, thank you. So through you to staff, that puts my mind a bit at ease, because when I'm reading the geotechnical reports, of course I'm not a geotech, but in reading through it, it is quite extensive, and listening to the residents that live in the area, there is quite a bit of rock and blasting that has to be done. So it gives me comfort knowing that at the time of subdivision, all of those technical reports have to be complete, and the site can only handle what the site can handle as far as where the lots can go. When this first came to our table, I was going back and forth whether 350-meter lots was the right size lots for this development. And one further question, actually. At the very top, the two that sort of go on to Brailsford, through you, Your Worship, to staff, what is the current size lots on Brailsford? Do we know what zone and what current size those lots are?
Through Your Worship, on Brailsford, they're about 500 to 600 square meter lots, and they are within the Stone Ridge Estates CD zone, I believe.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything further from members of council? So in terms of the fence, though, that would need, that would be something that you would be looking for direction today, or would that be resolved at the subdivision time?
Your Worship, that would be something that we would be requesting direction from council tonight.
Okay,
with regards to the fencing.
Let's talk about the fence. Councillor Casper?
I'll move third reading subject to a fence being constructed on the eastern property line of the developed property.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Ray. In terms of fence, though, I'm looking for an amendment. Would that be like a cedar fence or just like a pre-treated fence, solid wood fence? I think that's that's an important detail, I think.
Right. I hadn't given much thought, but I just, after hearing the concerns about some type of adequate fencing, we don't have a bylaw that clearly identifies that. I would hope that the applicant would come forward as a good neighbor and put together a fence that is appropriate to address the concerns. I wouldn't want to see just a plain chain link fence. That's just my opinion. A cedar fence, a cedar hedge fence, it may look nice, but sometimes they may not be looked after, and so the validity of a live cedar fence no longer exists if it's not properly looked after. So, I'm sort of old-fashioned. I think that I'd be more inclined to have a wooden fence, whether it's a good neighbor style fence, a solid board fence. I'm not hung up on it.
Are you satisfied with that amendment, subject to a solid wood fence being constructed between the development and abutting properties? Does that work, Councillor Casper? Does that work with the seconder, Councillor Ray? Okay. To our staff, please.
If I may, Your Worship, if we could have that added to the covenant that's going to be required as a part of the rezoning for the parking and I can't remember what the other issue was. There was two issues. And we could add the fencing requirement as a condition of subdivision through the covenant.
Okay, so there's quite a lengthy motion here. We're looking to our corporate officer in terms of where that can be put in here. Sorry, I'm having difficulty reading that. 15 off-street visitor parking spaces, and then the fence piece, or is it enough that it's captured as the motion is written on the screen here? Will that suffice?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think that rather than muddle the covenant motion, perhaps we could just add as part of the Section 219 covenant to the third reading motion.
Okay. Is that good? Okay. So we have we're sort of doing this out of order because there's the motion that council has moved and seconded, which is third reading, but we also have the motion that staff has put forward first off. So can I move third reading? Can I call the question on third reading to clear it and then go back to the top one? Is that in order?
Yes, Your Worship, it would be, because the top motion needs to be done prior to final adoption, so that would be appropriate.
That would be appropriate, okay. So discussion on third reading, council. Council give third reading to the bylaw cited as zoning amendment bylaw 675, 600-39, subject to a solid wooden fence being constructed between the development and abutting properties as part of the Section 219 covenant. Any further discussion or comments on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Parkinson and myself are opposed. Carries. And then I'll move to the top one, and that is that council direct that prior to final adoption of zoning amendment bylaw 675 600-39, the owner enters into a Section 219 covenant with the District of Sauk to ensure that at time of subdivision the owner constructs a minimum of 15 off-street visitor parking spaces in addition to the number of parking spaces required on each residential lot as per the zoning bylaw for a single-family dwelling and secondary suites. Would someone like to move that? Moved by Councillor Ray and seconded by Councillor Casper. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Parkinson's opposed, and that's carried as well. Okay, thank you everyone for the discussion. I really appreciate everyone who attended and your comments, as well as the developer for being present and answering those questions as well. So we'll move back into the agenda here. This time I'll make sure that I'm going in order. Yeah, it is. So that piece is finished. I'd like to go into our delegation now, which is item 5.1. Ms. Lurs, sorry to keep you waiting, Ms. Lurs.
Thank you.
And sorry, Ms. Lurs, there's 5 minutes.
But the timer's going. I haven't talked yet.
I know, I'll add 10 seconds.
On October 10th, today's October 10th, on September 18th, 2017, Council granted a business license to an owner operating a welding, fabrication, automotive repairs, and sales operation illegally on agricultural land, OCP and RU3 in the zoning bylaw. Council was led to believe that this property was used to operate the present operation for 19 years before incorporation, when in fact the present owner purchased the property in September 22nd, 2002. And if you look at your packages, you'll see on page 2 when the property was actually purchased 17 years ago. This business is operating illegally and contravenes dozens of bylaws within the District of Sauk. Senior staff has visited the property and recognized the contraventions and was told he was not permitted to sell vehicles under the existing zone and he'd have to make application to the district for rezoning. Note on page 1 what the request was for: fabrication, welding repairs, automotive repairs, and automotive sales. And to have a garage policy, which is necessary to sell cars. You can also look in your OCP and zoning, or look on page 8 and page 9 and page 11, where the comments from you, Mayor Tait. You said when our CEO and Mr. Howard made a site visit, Mr. Howard asked Mr. Driver to attend the district office to talk about what he wanted to do on his property and to make certain what he proposed to fit with the current zoning for his property. Mr. Driver did so and was told that selling vehicles was not permitted under the existing zone and that he would need to make application to the district for rezoning his property. Staff informed Mr. Driver that the approval of said application would be challenging given the current OCP designation for that area. In one full swoop, Council moved and seconded and voted a zoning change use on this property without any further support or information from staff. This property is not legally conforming. The allowed use in this property has not changed from the 1988 bylaw to present. Staff told Mr. Driver it would be challenging to prove such a change due to the current OCP. Objectives of the OCP are to preserve lands classified as having potential for agriculture and encourage production thereof. The history of this property has been a chicken farm, as Councillor Pearson can attest to, having cleaned the barns, and a horse farm. The manures from these operations have been spread on the lands, and the soil was amazing for growing. There was an orchard and berries, and there's also garden used for producing food for sale and consumption. Without permit or consideration for the environment, the soil has been stripped from the land. And we heard what's happening, and again, replaced with rocks, covered with semi-trucks and trailers, and many abandoned rusty vehicles strewn throughout, devastating the environment and surrounding properties. 4.5 of the OCP goals of agriculture and food security are to protect the availability of existing agricultural lands and the ability of the community to produce food locally. Yet, although notified staff allowed the complete removal of first-class growing soil to be removed from 5536 Hook Road and replaced with rocks. And there is, in the OCP, it's very clear that you have to have a permit to remove soil from agricultural land, and from all soil, actually, from many lands, and to bring in soil. There are two significant microclimates on the Lower Island. One is in West Saanich, the other is in Casinos. Look at the devastation around the agricultural world with fires and floods. We need to protect and enhance what we have for our own survival. Applications continually come to Council with staff recommendations and changes to the OCP. Why? Why no single-family dwellings being allowed in the town centre? Who changed the plan? Why are buildings not being built into the landscapes and to not block out the harbour and basin? Who's watching and protecting our OCP? Who's making decisions to change our community? Tall buildings raising up on the harbour side of the Souk Road block out our beautiful harbour. Is this consistent with the OCP? Where are the community gardens and subdivisions? We have an OCP, but is not adhered to. Neither is the zoning or the respect for agriculture. Our agricultural plan is still not complete, and our OCP is way overdue. Council and staff continue to change our landscape by bringing forward OCP changes and zoning changes, and have cancelled the most important document for our region, which is the official community plan, which then triggers the zoning bylaw to support the plan. Council decided not to pursue the OCP, although it is legislated that it should be reviewed every 5 years. It has been 7 years. If staff is too busy, then hire a consultant or set up a committee with a staff member committee of the public with staff member to review the OCP. The pressure in our community is great, but it is our community. We need to plan and preserve our land. All this talk of CO2 and its detriments, but it's necessary for trees and greenery. Why are we cramming in houses and paving driveways and increasing the number of cars and removing the trees and green spaces if we truly are supporting the reduction of greenhouse gases? We need to stop now, review where we're going with the public's input, devise the official community plan, which truly reflects the need for a healthy and thriving community, which respects the land where we live.
Thank you, Ms. Lors.
I know times.
That was 5 minutes and 30 seconds.
Well, I'm almost done, so could you please give me the finishing part here? It's just 1 minute. It shows 30 seconds on here.
Well, it stops at 30. It's gone. You actually went over that. I'll give you your 30 seconds, but we need to move on.
The intermunicipal business license given to 5536 Souk Road needs to be revoked, as you cannot condone a business which is operating illegally or on improperly zoned property. There should have been a staff report to inform council, and also council should have been notified that there is a checklist required for business license approvals, and the license could not be done in one day, which it was. It's called due process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lures. Okay, just touching in just a moment. Yeah. Just in terms of the conversation that council had at the last meeting and Ms. Lures' delegation this evening, as well as maybe other queries councillors may have received since then, I want to know if council would like a staff report that talks about this licensing so that we understand where we're at and could potentially have corrective action taken as needed. I'll recognize Councillor Ray, then Councillor Parkinson, then Pearson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I totally support returning this matter to Council with a staff report. I think it's clear that the decision rests solely with this Council after the delegation appeared in September. I have advocated for the last term and this term that we not make motions on the fly, because we seem to get ourselves into trouble. And here we are once again. But for the record, I want to be very clear that this decision was the result of a council decision and not lack of work by our staff.
Thank you, Councillor Ray. Councillor Parkinson?
I would second that motion.
Okay, did I hear a motion? There was no motion, would you?
No, I didn't. It was more of a comment, but yes.
I would move the motion that we send this back to staff for a report.
Second.
Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. So speaking on the motion, Councillor Casper, please.
Yeah, I will not be supporting the motion, and I have a number of reasons. I appreciate other people's opinions, but they're just opinions. They're not based on fact, and what we were presented with when the decision was made was based on a standing use on that property, BC Assessment Authority assessments on the property for commercial and industrial uses. And if council is going to support the motion, then the Community Charter and or Local Government Act should be closely examined in regard to what could become a show cause hearing, which could lead to council making a decision on rescinding the business license. It cannot be arbitrarily done by council. They have to give a show cause hearing and show cause why that license would in fact be rescinded. So I don't view the decision lightly. I didn't make the decision when it was made lightly. I examined all the facts. And again, you know, to have one individual come forward, and I appreciate the comments and concerns, but, you know, I'm cognizant of the fact that the district has done business with this company on at least one occasion that I know of, and that was pointed out. And it has also done business with a wide range of people within the community. So to turn a blind eye and say, oh, there is no business activity here and that it's inappropriate, I think is suspect, because the use has been going on for many years, and through at least 3 elected council administrations, there's never been any action taken against this property to cease and desist its operations. There's been no court action taken, nothing that I've ever seen. So that speaks volumes in itself. And I look at the wisdom of the other councils and the administrations of the past, and I'm just sad by the fact that the applicant and the individual had to come forward and actually ask for a business license. And this is no different than the small a building on Souk Road that has been zoned residential for years, and it has had businesses on and off for decades. And that property owner had to come to council to get a business license to allow activities that they felt that they were legally entitled to do. So I won't be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Casper. Those very valid points. Other comments on the motion? On the motion, Councillor Parkinson.
While I agree with Councillor Casper and his comments, I do not see what's wrong with having a staff report to make sure that we understand what all the guidelines are for future items that come forward.
On the motion, Councillor Ray.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. When the applicant was here in September looking for the business license, the question that I asked him was when was he operating the business prior to incorporation, and I was advised at that time by the applicant that he was. According to the information that we received tonight, he didn't own the property at that residence prior to 2000. So I do see a very big difference between this piece of property and the piece of property that has been operated as a business for decades on Souk Road. So I will be supporting the motion, and thank you.
On the motion, Councillor Berger, please.
Yes, thank you. Unfortunately, due to sick kids, I wasn't able to attend the meeting, but I tried to watch part of it online. I don't see any harm in supporting the motion, and I will support it, based on the fact that I think that there's just a few questions that I'd like to have answered and have information coming from our staff rather than outside public. As we've heard before, it sounds to me like there's been conflicting information both through the applicant as well as what we've heard today. So for me, I'd like to review what the tax class is being collected on it. I'd like to know what BC Assessment has their classification set at. What is the current zone? I think I heard in the last meeting you guys talked about there being a split zone. If there is a split zone on the property, for me that's important information as well. And then also what constitutes legal nonconforming, and does that mean legal nonconforming can be granted based on one particular business, or does legal nonconforming based on a new type of business as well, being that it could be relative to the previous business? So for me, those are the questions that I'd like to have answered through a staff report. So I'll support the motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Berger. Further comments on the motion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Opposed? I have Councillor Casper and Pearson opposed. The motion carries. Does staff have the materials that were presented this evening? Okay, so there is an extra copy here. If I can, we'll pass this forward to staff because this is information received with, and I think it formed part of the delegation. So then with all the information that's been coming in from delegations, then perhaps staff could have both sets of those, and just so you have it and you could vet it, and we look forward to your report. Okay, thank you. Okay, unfinished business. We unfortunately had to leave the building the last time due to a heat sensor and strong odors, which turned out to be the heating system and dust, so thankfully the building is well. It would just cut our meeting short. So we do have a few outstanding items. Lot A log 6.1, and there is a report in the yellow pages. I understand that these logs have probably all moved. Is that correct? They've all been moved to the works yard? Okay. So then it was there was some discussion then on what we could do. We looked at potentially a fundraising opportunity, and we approved moving the logs. So at this point, there's a few options here for council to consider, and staff is looking for direction. So one of them was that, maybe I'll just turn this over to staff to speak to it so I don't have to. Councillor Parkinson?
Through your worship, can we just have 5 minutes to look at it first so we know what's in this package?
Well, why don't we just look at the one report specific to this, and our policy, it's just the 2 pages, and we do have the policy which is already in place, so I think we can kind of leave that for background information, page 5 to 25. So if we could just maybe have a couple of minutes. How about 2 minutes? Could I have 2 minutes on the timer? Thank you. Okay, I'd like to call everyone's attention back. Thank you for that pause. It's always a challenge when you receive new information to get through, so at least this way everyone's read it. Turning this to our fire chief. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you know, with the cleanup of Lot A, we produced some, surplus material. Estimation of about 60 to 80 cords of wood, and that's alder wood. On September 18th, the council had discussed a fundraising opportunity. The wood could be offered to community groups, or a decision on how we'd end up deciding on what community groups would be interested in this. As per our purchasing and disposal policy 5.6, there are really 4 types of options to deal with this surplus. The first 2, we can't trade it in and obviously donate it to another department. There's an option to advertise it for sale. This report's talking about 2 options that can look at having the wood donated. We can't just have anyone come in and cut this wood that's currently in the public works yard. Need to have proper equipment and, of course, the liability insurance. On the second page of the report, option 1 is about contracting a local business to cut the raw logs. There's an estimated cost that this could cost anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000. Donate the firewood to a local nonprofit organization who then can in turn sell it. Still require some staff resources to support this. There's an estimate that the cord of wood to a nonprofit organization approximately about $125 per cord. With the amount of that we have, about 60 to 80 cords, anywhere from $7,500 to $10,000. The nonprofit organizations will need to ensure that they are also insured for collection of the firewood if they're working on the municipal property. The second option is advertising the raw logs for sale on the website. The purchaser would require adequate equipment and insurance to remove the logs from the public works yard. The proceeds of the sale of raw logs could then be donated to a local nonprofit organization at the council's discretion. We are looking for council direction and how to select a nonprofit organization if you wish to do so.
Okay, so now that we've received that, thank you, Chief, and have a report here. Councillor comments. Councillor Parkinson, please.
Through you, Your Worship. Just reading this, option 2 sounds viable, where we put out a call to see if we have a purchaser to purchase them. And then instead of going out to a nonprofit, we could put it into our community grants program for additional funds for different groups coming forward requesting funding from us. Just a thought.
Okay. Other comments? Thank you for that. From Councillor Casper, please.
Well, my only fear with doing that is that if the proposed value of the wood on a donated basis or a sale basis is being green wood, has a value of $125, we'd be lucky to get 50 cents on the dollar from a contractor. And so the amount of money that would be generated and passed through to the nonprofits wouldn't be as high as it could be. I'm confident that there are service clubs or organizations that can show, as they have in the past, that they have liability insurance and that they can bring forward persons who are qualified to actually buck up the wood for the purpose of removal, so that the nonprofits could actually benefit from the work that they proceed with. I'm willing to take that risk, and the way to test the waters is to actually put out a proposal call to nonprofits to come forward with a business plan that can address the concerns raised by the fire chief and his role, and still meet the concerns that have been identified in the staff report.
So that would be a third option then, Councillor Casper. Okay. Other comments from members of council? Councillor Ray?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. While I like the ideas of both option 1 and option 2, a couple of things. Option 1 is that how do you start to sort through which nonprofit or which nonprofits, plural, rise to the top if you have a number of them that would qualify and meet everything that we're asking for. How do you decide who gets how much? And option 2 is certainly an option. I would rather see the money go back into the budget, to be honest with you. I think we're always looking for money, and if there's about $10,000 here, I'd rather see the money come back into the district pot rather than going out.
Other comments? Councillor Pearson.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, is that for eternity, cutting firewood has been a fundraiser source for many organizations here in Sault. I don't think there will be an onslaught of organizations that will come forward to cut and split wood. There will be some fathers of some kids in some organization that will have the expertise, and they'll come forward. As they've done, they've dropped it off outside the ballpark, they've dropped it off outside the soccer field, and they have a day where they do it. So I would be supporting the lines that Councillor Casper was be talking is advertised, is to see who's interested. If that failed to generate any kind of interest, well, then we could go down a different road of potentially selling it as one lot. But I have a question. I talked to the contractor, or through the contractor, that he was trying to find a place to drop the logs off, and we have other equipment stored down in that yard, and I was kind of curious about that other equipment. That doesn't look like our equipment when I go down the road. By the logs, so in the far right-hand side of the property, is that our lot? There seems to be some lift trucks and things like that in there. So,
Your Worship, through to Councillor Pearson, the lift truck is owned by Vic City Crane, thank you, and they lease a small area on that on that one portion from us. Yes.
Okay, I know. I was just curious because they were kind of looking for a spot. It just starting to look crowded, and I wasn't familiar with whose equipment that was. So, thank you. So, anyways, I would make a motion that we test the waters to see if there's any organizations, by a simple ad in the local newspapers to see if anybody's interested. I'd make the motion.
Second then? Seconded by Councillor Parkinson. So let's put an ad out and see if there's any nonprofit entities insured and capable of bucking and carting the wood away. We run this for a couple of weeks, 2 weeks. Is that good? 3 weeks? 2 weeks? That's been moved by Councillor Pearson and seconded by Councillor Parkinson. So I am speaking on the motion. So yeah, we'll run it for a couple of weeks and see what happens, and then we have a staff report to come back to. So staff is looking to know where the advertisements should go. So, Council, in what media forms would you like to advertise? Councillor Parkinson?
On our website and in the Mirror.
District website and the Mirror? And leave it at that, or do you want to consider any other online source medias? Okay, district website and the Sault Mirror, asking for proposals. Councillor Parkinson?
And we can also put it in the Pocket News.
Okay, district website, Sault News Mirror, and Sault Pocket News, asking for proposals from nonprofit organizations for 2 weeks. And I would say, this doesn't need to be in the motion, but just our action that whatever just find a 2 week period, so whatever those cutoffs for those entities would be. Okay, is the mover and the seconder content with the wording of the motion that Councillor X staff to place an advertisement on the district website and the Sault News Mirror and Sault Pocket News asking for proposals from nonprofit organizations for 2 weeks to collect? At the very end, it should be to collect and to cut and collect the firewood. We need to know what we're talking about, right? To cut the raw logs into firewood. To collect, to cut, collect, and sell the firewood. Collect and sell the firewood. Is that good? Oh, to our fire chief?
I think the proper terminology would probably be buck and split.
Buck, okay, sorry. Okay, I stand corrected, please. So to buck, I just chopped it. To buck and split. I think collect and sell is still reasonable to include in there, right? Okay. Buck and split, collect and sell the firewood. Is that good? Everyone, mover, seconder?
The collect piece needs to be done. We've already collected.
No, but it has to be collected from that yard, right? They have to take it away. We're not just selling it from there. They have to take it away, right? Good. Fine, no collection. Remove. Councillor Casper, on the motion, please.
Yeah, so I don't see any risk to the district if there are members of the public that actually come onto the yard while this activity is occurring. It's no different than the business activities that have occurred there over the past 7 years, where other members of the public that had nothing to do with the businesses that have been operating there had come onto the district property. There's no control mechanisms in place whatsoever, no supervision by our staff while those instances occur. So I'm comforted by the fact that there's been no incidents when there's been members of the public on our property in the past. So I think this will work.
Okay, well, let's see what happens. Okay? All right, any further comments? We're good with the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. All right, we're moving on. Okay. Next, unfinished business. We will get through this tonight. So we have a certificate of appreciation I'd just like to present that's been received. This came from the Souk Lions Canada Day Committee, and it's presented to the District of Souk, continued support of the Canada Day festivities at the Souk Flats, and we were all there for Canada's sesquicentennial. I just love saying that word. So I just a motion that we receive this certificate, please. So moved by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor Berger. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously, and many thanks to the Lions Club for all of their work in the community. Unfinished block of correspondence from September 1st to 13th. We have a motion to receive and file accordingly this block. Councillor Ray, please, then Parkinson.
I'd just like to pull the email from September the 8th from Mr. Darren Brown regarding the water for North Sioux.
Okay, so we'll extract that from the block, please. Councillor Parkinson.
Same one, and also from September 13th for the hosting the conferences.
That was September 13th. Okay, just a sec here. So on the rest of the correspondence, was there anything else that anyone wanted to remove? So on the move receipt and file by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Berger. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. So I'll turn to Councillor Ray, your September 8th email from Darren Brown.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. This has been a request that's gone for well over a couple of years now, I think, and I'm just wondering if Councillor Pearson has any updates as he sits on the Wanda Fuca.
Actually, I can speak to that myself. The CRD is, we're now in an arbitration with the Capital Regional District about water and the extension to water. That all came out of the proposed regional sustainability strategy, which would replace the regional growth strategy that requires unanimous consent from all participating municipalities. A few of us supported it because it would allow water extension, but it failed to have that support, so now it's moving through arbitration. And both myself and Councillor Casper, along with Mr. Howard, were appointed. Although Souk supports it, we still want to know how this process is going to evolve and have a voice through that conversation as it does. To date, I've heard nothing on it, so this occurred in the summertime, July, I believe. And, well, actually, it was long before that, but the arbitration hasn't picked up, so we're just at a standstill. So that's where that water extension lies.
if I could follow
Councillor
up.
Pearson, would you like to add to that?
Yes, and through the chair to Councillor Ray is, again, this needs to be, whenever we're going to extend water lines, we have to clearly identify that in our OCP, and that's where we have to really pay attention to the OCP when we adopt it, or when it gets back in front of us, so. Okay, and it's extending to water to your borders. It's the same process that, our OCP becomes the driving decision maker for the CRD board and water extension. So if they look at any extensions in our area, they will check our OCP first to see if we've identified in our OCP clearly that water will be extended to those areas. So it's up to us to make sure our OCP reflects where we want the water to go. That's step one.
At present, our OCP does, so it's a matter of...
Actually, it doesn't, according to their interpretation.
Well,
our new OCP will, but our current one doesn't.
Okay, there's
because
some language in there.
it's for the upland development of those lands, and that's what they consider when they do it. So I could pass that question through the chair to Mr. Howitt, and if he can remember what was said about the water line extension out Otter Point Road.
Not to put you on the spot.
If I could ask Councillor Pearson just to back up and ask me again, please. I wasn't too sure how you were coming at the question.
No, it's if the regional water supply looks at our OCP and our OCP isn't clear that we want water there for the purposes of the existing homes and upland development, then that will be it won't be they won't do it. It will just go to the back of the pile. I guess that's probably a good way to say it. Is that right, Mr. Howard?
Yes, in my dealings with the CRD water people with regards to the issue of going up Otter Point Road, they did look at it early last year with regards to possibly going up there under their, it's almost like a DCC program. I'm not too sure if they call it that, but it didn't fit their model with regard to the potential of future development up Otter Point Road. And that's where we've got to be careful on our OCP when we get to identifying growth nodes, that we identify growth nodes in areas of existing homes that we need and want to supply water to. There is an ability for the existing owners to apply themselves directly to the CRD and come up with a payment plan if they choose to do so, but there would be no offset cost from the district.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Councillor Ray, follow up, then Parkinson.
Just a comment. I guess I'm quite frustrated as I raised this up over 2 years ago, and what it says to me is it's bureaucracy. I think everybody in our community has the right to have water come to their home, and I just find that this spanned the last council, and now 3 years into this council, being informed that we don't have everything in order, I find quite upsetting.
Okay, this is a whole other conversation on water for Sioux, so I don't want to entertain any more conversation on this without us having more facts. We are stuck in arbitration with the CRD in terms of water extension to those areas that do not have pipe water, and that's a major challenge. So let's just leave that, and we can have another dialogue on water at another time with more information in front of us. Councillor Parkinson, to your... You of the Communities in Blooms?
Through your worship, there was a request for proposal for 2018 for the conference to go out to different municipalities. I would like to see the District of Sioux apply once again to have the Community in Bloom conference held here in Sioux. And I think that because we had it here before, we would have the paperwork on it and what needs to be done to have the conference here. So all we would have to do is update what we previously sent in, seen as we received the conference here.
Okay, would you like to make that motion?
That is my motion.
Okay, so that's a motion and a...
Thanks, Your Worship. I trust this is an appropriate time for me to speak to this. You, I hope, have a letter in front of you that is seeking Sault's council to support Langford in its bid to bring Amazon HQ2 to the South Island. So that's a pretty crazy thing, but I want you to think about it for a couple of reasons, that Sault's support could be meaningful. I've got 3 kids. Sorry, my name is David Evans, 6860 Banner Road. I've got 3 kids. They're 10, 13, and 15. They've got friends. I've got staff who are younger than me. Not a single one of them has come to me and said, hey, Dave, when I graduate from university, I want to be a logger, or I want to be a fisherman, or I want to work in a mine in Campbell River. But the future of Vancouver Island's industry is probably service and tech. And Amazon in the South Island is nothing but service and tech. Something else I want you to think about is that this kind of works on the bidding muscle of the region, of Sault and Langford and the CRD, in that if we don't put ourselves out for these uncomfortable, crazy, far-fetched ideas, then we'll never get them. If we don't get comfortable with asking for things that are a little bit uncomfortable, we won't do that. I remember at university, the one lesson I really remember and I cherish is that my favorite prof said, the secret to success is to keep yourself in a constant state of slight discomfort. To find something that you're not comfortable doing and do it, and then you've done it, and you can do it again. And so as far as bringing Amazon to the South Island, it seems far-fetched. It seems like, with 200 cities across the world competing for this particular project, this region has a pretty small chance of getting it. But if you're at a baseball game and you're on the bench and the coach says, hey, Dave, you want to go to bat? And you say, nah, I'm going to sit here. I'm not going to swing. I'm just going to leave things the way they are. That certainty, that guarantees that, well, you won't strike out. It guarantees you won't hit a home run. It guarantees the game will go on without you. But if you say, yeah, I think I will take a swing, sure, why not? And maybe I'll strike out, and maybe I'll stumble rounding first base and be embarrassed and be laughed at, but maybe I'll hit a home run. And this bid, frankly, is a chance for our region to hit 10,000 home runs with a single swing of the bat. So I hope Sault Council can see clear to supporting the City of Langford's bid to bring Amazon HQ2 to the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. I didn't have my microphone on, but what I meant to say was that the public question period is for anything on the agenda except for the public hearing. So that was totally acceptable, or I would have called you out of order. It's just the public hearing is closed, so we can't receive any more submissions on that. So other items on the agenda for the public, please.
I just wanted to comment as well on comments about the water and the OCP. Again, the OCP needs to come forward in order to be addressing the water. The OCP is on the back burner, as Council has put it there, so it has to come forward. And another comment made by Councillor Casper in regard to the property that was legally non-conforming on Sault Road. That was because it was consistently operating before incorporation, and this other property was not operating. It was purchased in 2000, and it was not operating then. It was a portable welding operation operating till 2014 in that manner. So just to keep the facts straight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lures. Other comments or questions from members of the public here? Second and final time? Okay, we're moving on. Okay. That brings us to item 10.1. Right?
Through your worship, that was moved to...
Oh, right. We moved, when we approved the agenda, we moved 11.2 Sewer Service Area Report to immediately following the question and comment periods. So, thank you. 11.2 would be on page 17 of the yellow pages. There's a replacement page. Sorry, no, it's 157 of your package with a replacement page in the report. So, turning it over to staff, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The reason this report is in front of Council right now is that given the original SSA and the expansion that previous councils and this council have approved over the number of years since this sewer plant was built, we are heading into needing to make decisions with respect to expansion on our plant. If council should choose to expand the system and where they choose to expand it to, will have definitely some implications towards long-range planning for any expansion should council choose to do so. We require as staff decisions today, not literally today, but I'm putting the bug in the ear of council to start thinking about our capacity at the plant and potential expansion, because any decision you make today is going to take at least 2 to 4 years to build out. What we're asking for tonight is a step towards providing information to council that is full in the form of an engineering report from Stantec. So you have the report in front of you. Staff are here, are happy to walk you through the report and or answer any questions you may have. So at this point, I will turn it over to our Director of Development Services and to our Manager of the Treatment Plant.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to pick up on what the CAO is reviewing through the report is we're running right now about 72% capacity or 71% capacity within the system itself. And what we need to know from council is a direction of what council foresees in the way of future growth so we can start planning and start doing some studies with regards to future extension of the plant and future extension of the system itself. We need to know specifically where council envisions growth, and that will where you envision growth to be, and that will be part of the OCP process as well. But what we're looking for from this report, and not today as the CAO says, but what we're looking for is permission to go forward and get a sewer study to look at expansion and see what the magnitude of cost is to service certain areas of our municipality. But we do need the direction of where council envisions growth. We talked about the Whiff and Spit area. We've talked about perhaps going across the bridge with regards to going into the Kaltassin area. But we need some direction because, as the CAO pointed out, whatever we do in the way of future capacity, we got to start planning now because it's going to take 3 to 4 years to get it up and running after decisions are made of where we're going to service future growth. And from that point on, I would like to say that our plant manager is here to answer the technical questions, and I'm here to answer more of the planning questions with regards to growth and how we might get there, or how we can employ the services of Stantec to help us out in looking at where the future service is and what kind of magnitude of cost we're looking at for these future services.
Okay, so when I read through the report, I looked at it, it just seemed very technical, straightforward, but now I'm hearing that staff wants to know where does council envision our growth and how, like, I think that is a different conversation for like a committee of the whole. Like if you're like, I think right now on the spot that we don't have those materials to answer that question and to give that to staff. And in terms of looking at the technical nature about what the system is doing now and those sorts of things, I think that sort of report we can answer. But the other one, that requires greater public consultation. That's not an appropriate time for this evening, in my view.
You're absolutely right, Your Worship. But what staff are asking for is funds that I believe are available in the budget already to hire someone that will tell us exactly what we need 4 years out. So what we're doing is taking a look at some planning and to hire an expert in the planning area of wastewater treatment plants, and that would be Stantec for us, to do some work to provide more information to council so that when we head into these conversations about sewer, we can lay out a plan for extensive public consultation.
Councillor Pearson?
Yes, thank you, through the chair to our CAO. So if I'm reading this correctly, you're looking for a study, $70K for a study, or you're really looking for a study and you just want us to pay for it. The current operating capacity of the plant, because you've labeled this as operating contingency. I'm just looking at the recommendation and the report summary. So basically what I guess I'm trying to figure out is are you saying that our capacity, we're coming up against capacity, and then the discussion to the mayor's comment would be along with where we're going to expand next and what that capacity needs to be? Is that kind of where you're going with this? Through the chair.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Pearson, we need to have a study done looking at the system as it exists today, confirm its capacity of today, although we're fairly confident of what our capacity is. But we need to know what we need to do from the way of the operating of the plant and the integral part of the system if we are going to expand. Mm-hmm. And perhaps my previous statement about where we're going to be planning is maybe a little overzealous on my part, and I apologize. But we need some direction, and this study will certainly help us look at, if we're talking about an area comparable to the existing SSA number 1, what we would have to do in the way of plant upgrades and the system upgrade, etc. I didn't mean to designate areas of growth, and I apologize for that.
Okay. So, and thank you for that, Director of Planning and Engineering, or whatever it is that you do. Thank you. Thank you for those. But I guess for me is that I seem to recall that we had identified nodes for expansion already. So I guess that was where I was kind of getting confused. So as an example, not as a discussion, as an example, we already have a plan in place to pick up the whip and spit area. What you need to know now is what, if we did do that, what would the plant need? Am I getting into the right? Not to preempt the mayor's discussion about where we're going, as an example.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Pearson, you are correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I've got the concept, because those plans are already done. They've already been drawn. Engineering and all of those things have already been loosely put into place with a pump station and all those things. Okay, I'm good with that. So now the study that you're asking for now is overall globally with the sewer system. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Berger, then Parkinson, then Casper.
Yes, thank you. My comments are quite similar to Councillor Pearson's, and I was going to make the comment that I think it was about 6 years ago that Stantec did a report looking at what it would cost to go down to Coun as well as going down to Whiff and Spit. It was part of their big EPCOR's 21-year deal that they were trying to franchise, or it was a public partnership. Anyway, Stantec was the one that did the report for that, so that should be somewhere for those two areas. But again, that's another conversation, because then we'd have to look at doing amendments to our liquid waste management plan, and that's a whole nother conversation that I think is a greater conversation that has to be had, but I think that this encompasses something different. Anyhow, further to conversations about our existing plant, I have a question through you to staff. When looking at the chart that was supplied here, the pre-sold lots, is that 799? Am I reading that correctly, that there's 799 pre-sold lots that still have yet to be built on? Through you to staff.
That's in this page.
Page 17 to 25.
That is actually the SFEs, so it's 1.7 SFE, our population per SFE.
1.7. Okay, my And my biggest concern when reading this agenda item is what we have currently. And staff had echoed that as well. It's currently, we have so many pre-sold lots that are yet to come on the system. The original design of the system didn't include the past council's motion to include secondary suites in all single-family residences, so I'm sure that boasted up quite a bit of use in our system as well. As far as infill, we've done lots of growth in our town centre, and we've expanded based on, this road has sewer, so the next road has to join in, the next road has to join in. So for me, the most important study would be looking at currently where we're at and infilling where we need to infill with those additional pre-sold lots that have yet to be put on the system.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Berger, the figures that we have today do take into account all the pre-sold. And for the most part, it has also included the additional ones that we've taken on. But we need this study to confirm the numbers, and we also need the overall report that will allow us to assess costs associated with servicing other areas that we've talked about in the past, i.e. whiff and spit, as Councillor Pearson has put out there. We just need this. A little more detailed report than we've had before. The report that you alluded to with regards to EBCOR, that was a very, very high level assessment of what might be required to service other areas, but it wasn't detailed enough to give hard costs with regards to engineering and construction of the system in those areas.
Okay, Councillor Parkinson, then Casper.
Through your worship, I was going to say that we had the study previously done as well through Stantec. I would say that this would be a discussion at the Committee of the Whole with all the information and seeing what the other plan that was in place already is. $70,000 is a lot of money going out for a plan when we already have one in place. So I would just like to confirm all of that.
To respect to staff, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Berger.
Parkinson.
Sorry. Gosh, my bad. Councillor Parkinson. I apologize for that. This study was 6 years ago. Costs have increased dramatically in those 6 years. That's the one point that we need to consider, and this new information coming forward would be a level deeper than what we got 6 years ago. But I'm sure that staff will be happy to take a look at what we did 6 years ago and compare it to what we're suggesting now, and then come back to council should you wish at a Committee of the Whole meeting or at a regular council meeting and talk about what the differences are and what we're asking for $70,000. It's just a point to note that we do have room in our current budget, and I think we're looking for direction from council as to where you want us to go as staff.
Councillor Casper.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. The amount of money that's being requested, is it come out of the sewer fund through the staff?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Casper, no, it does not come out of the sewer fund. That's for SSA number 1. What we're suggesting is that we have room in the operating contingency for this expenditure.
So just further to that, I'm reluctant to use any other source of money to benefit the sewer system. And this municipality got itself into a bit of hot water by using regular taxpayer money from other properties that do not contribute or are part of the sewer specified area. And if there's going to be any money spent that is going to confirm numbers of the existing sewer specified area, the amount of development that can occur based on current zoning within the sewer specified area, and upgrade the capital costs of the existing sewer specified area as to what should happen to accommodate growth based on what the current realities are, that there is infilling, that our zoning bylaw has allowed for secondary suites, that our lot sizes are 350 square meters, and all of these things were done after the current system was built and designed based on the old zoning bylaw that had larger lot sizes and did not permit secondary suites. So I'm reluctant to spend any money from general taxpayers' fund to accommodate that type of analysis. I'm not supportive of looking at future expansion until we get answers as to the current system and what can be done either within this 5-year period or a 5 to 10-year period to make whole the current operation. I'm not prepared to go out there and start doing works and improvements outside of the current boundary and then have those taxpayers who are part of the sewer specified area now bear the cost. What I can support is to take some funds out of the sewer fund because money has come from those sources and that's where it should rightly come from. But I don't live in the sewer specified area, just like half of the other properties in Souk are not part of the sewer specified area. So why should I, as a taxpayer and others, help pay for the benefit of the sewer specified area? It's that simple. I'm not prepared to support that. I would never support it because the district got itself into a bit of a problem. Over $600,000 was used of general taxpayer money to support the sewer system, and that had to be paid back by the parcel owners within the sewer specified area. So I just can't support taking any general taxpayer money. Now, if there was monies available within the sewer specified area fund to pay for these types of works, well then I think that's where it should appropriately come from. So I have another comment that I want to make, and it backs up what's been said by Councillor Pearson and Berger and also Parkinson, is that there were studies done, and that the studies that were developed came twofold. One, when the proposed franchise agreement that didn't pass the muster of the voters in 2011 by way of a counter petition, that failed. There was a lot of information gathered that was used as part of that program, and those numbers had identified a number of proposed capital projects associated with expansion of the sewer service area than it currently is now. Whiff and Spit had 3 phases, A, B, and C, and there were numbers associated with it, the size of pipes, where the pump stations were relocated, etc. So I could support us looking at that as an area because our strategic plan has stated that one of our goals was to actually look at the possibility of sewer expansion in the Whiff and Spit area. We've already made that statement. We've made that commitment. But I think the first thing that we got to do is make sure that the current system with the current boundaries as it is right now are whole and made whole. And I'd sooner spend $70,000 from the sewer fund or whatever it's going to cost to actually reaffirm these numbers, and if it means going out and doing some funding to make these things happen, then it should happen, because I can see that we could really get caught short, that suddenly there's a whole pile of development occurring within the specified area, and we by default, because we're not taking action to do these capital expansions within, we're going to be in trouble, serious trouble. And my last point is this, that even if we did contemplate expanding our current operation and increasing our annual flows that are permitted by discharge and our waste management permit, we also have to embark on a process to get our existing waste management permit amended. And that is not going to happen overnight, because it took a long time for the district to even get their approvals in the first place when the sewer system was built. So I think there's a lot of issues to be dealt with. I want to thank staff for putting these numbers together, because this paints a troubling picture in my mind. And I think there's light at the end of the tunnel, but I think we should focus on making sure that the current system is made whole and fully viable to accommodate the future development that is occurring right now within the sewer specified area. So thank you very much.
Okay, so is there funds in the sewer fund that this could be used?
Yes, Your Worship. Within the 2017 budget, within the current sewer area, we had set aside $65,000 for long-term plans. So that'd be appropriate to spend on looking at the current system, how it's performing, our long-term budgeting for the current system.
Okay.
If we're talking expansion, now we got to consider we're taking money from the current system to fund future users of a new system. So we may want to consider then some kind of a payback from the one fund to the other that gets created when there is an expansion.
Okay.
Operating funds, certain council members maybe don't consider that's an appropriate source, but it's got to either come there or the current SSA, and it's just when you take it from the current SSA, you're kind of taking it from a current person paying parcel tax right now to pay for someone else's system. So,
right.
Yeah.
It's just what I'm hearing right now from members of council is a reluctance to look at expansion, but a focus to look on where we're at right now in the current SSA. So in order to move this on, because I think it's important that we have a real look at where we're at so that we can plan for it, that maybe that would be part one, is that we have a concrete look, because the information that was 6 years ago, my humble opinion, is not useful. Suites have been allowed in all zones. We saw, small lots with suites permissible. There's hotels, there's Airbnbs. There's some commercial growth happening. The schools have connected. Other areas that were not connected are connected. So it's not good to rely on that material for any kind of decision on terms of our plant today. And I'm no expert in this, but to me, it's like I can't trust that information. It's too high level, and it's certainly not accurate of today. I just think there's a hesitancy to look at expansion until council knows where we're at. So I'm thinking this is almost a two-part piece here, is let's do the first part with the SSA, with the funding, if the wording can be changed to come from the 2017 sewer operating, to look at that piece, and when that report comes back, then we can have a look at that and look at what expansion is to our CO. I think otherwise, if we refer this back to a committee of the whole to bring in all the other reports, it's still, we know that we're at 70% capacity, and we have some serious planning to do, and we have budget timelines coming up ahead. So let's keep moving. Back to our CO.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a point to note that we did have the original SSA set up when the plant was first built. Through Progressive Council, other than the pre-sales, we have also expanded that original SSA for infill, further densification, and beyond the borders of that original SSA. So I think piece of information that we tried to articulate in the maps that you have not in your supplementary package, but in your regular package, those maps were intended to show the original SSA, and I believe they're in color for you to take a look at. And then it also showed the pre-sold, and it also showed what previous council and this council has subsequently approved. So that's the piece that I want to point out to council and make sure that when we say SSA, we're talking about the current SSA, including what we and previous councils have approved, which are beyond those borders. So I see nods around the table. I just wanted to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's what everyone is understanding. I just think that it's not the white area, basically, on this colored area, because they're not on sewer at all. So Councillor Berger, then Pearson, for anything new for a second time?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that I completely agree with you, and I think that doing this in a two-part system is probably the best way to go. When I read through the report, the part that I did like in here is that part of the study would look at any new efficiencies and new technology that we could entertain with our current system to help it run more effectively. So for me, that's worth having a look at where we are currently, what technology is now there that we can maybe, increase capacity without actually building our footprint larger. So I would be in support of using the $65,000 that we currently have in our budget to do a two-part system.
Councillor Pearson?
Yes, and thank you, the Chair. And Councillor Berger, you hit on a couple of key points there for me, so I won't repeat that. And Councillor Casper, the question I would ask in the motion, because I'll support this motion or I'll make it now, is that we also get information back on the legislative requirements on the outfall, so that we're prepared, because I think Councillor Casper's raised a good issue to say that, if there's a regulation piece that we need to take care of now, what's that time frame? So let's take the preemptive step. So I don't know if we need to add that or make sure that it's well known that that's part of our study, is what recommendations come back to our district. So I'll make the motion to support, or the council to immediately allocate the $70,000 for the study from our current sewer fund.
Okay, however, there's only $65,000 allowed there, so would that 65 suffice for this, or do we need to look at a budget amendment?
Your Worship, we already have the 65 approved in the plan, so we don't even really need a motion if we focus on the current existing
sewer
system. If council wishes us to use those monies for looking at expansion, then we will need a motion.
Okay, so the areas, so the wording says they're outside the current sewer service area. So
that needs to be amended.
Changed. I'm looking at the one on my screen here, right? The recommendation. So that's where I got my motion from.
So we're not doing what the staff recommendation is. We're not doing an expansion feasibility study on the extension to areas outside the sewer SSA.
Capacity.
We're looking at doing a capacity feasibility study within the existing SSA. So it may not even be that amount. We'll see. Councillor Casper?
Yeah.
While this is getting up there.
So I was just going to say that every time...
Have you seconded this? Because if we're speaking on the motion. Okay, now speak on the motion. Go ahead.
So every time council and past councils made amendments to expand the specified area, we actually changed the boundaries every time.
Yes.
So it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think the numbers are noted here. The print is so small, so I can't, give a percentage. But it's probably, I don't know, maybe 1/8 or one. I don't know. Somebody must have a calculator. Is it
20% the yellow?
Yeah. I don't know. Is it 20% or is it 15%?
I can't read it.
Yeah, so I can't read it either. So, but anyway, I just because I think it's important that the general public fully understand that all of the numbers or potential single-family equivalents that staff have identified both are currently hooked up from the original sewer specified referendum, the ones that have been added, and also the people who actually agreed to buy in to the specified area and be included after the original was adopted. All those numbers have the potential of generating, these flows, which could happen in 5 years, it could happen in 3 years. Who knows what's going to happen? My mind works this way. If we don't put shovels in the ground to do something within 2 years, then we may not be able to accommodate our current situation with our current boundaries. So,
Okay, so we have the motion, it's been moved and seconded, and that's the first part, so I think it's just the bottom sentence. I know that it's in the plan, as staff already said, but just so that council knows where it is, it could just say that council allocate the $65,000 from the 2017 sewer operating fund, because it's only $65,000 that's in there. Councillor Berger, then Parkinson from the 2017
Yes, thank you.
sewer operating. On the motion, please.
Yeah, just to follow up, I believe that the motion's not necessary as it's already currently within our budget. So it's a redundant motion. The $65,000 is already there to allocate to look at where we are right now.
I only added that in because councillors have raised very specifically that they want to ensure with certainty that it isn't coming from general taxpayer funds. So I think that's all been said enough, so we'll leave it out. We'll take it out. Councillor Parkinson?
You can take it out.
Do you want it in? I don't, like, to me, it's like whatever. Let's just move on with this because...
My question through you, Your Worship, is where do we get the information saying how much a capacity study costs $65,000 to $70,000? I would just like to know where that kind of information comes from. It seems quite excessive to me. So, is it just made up?
We are making it up because we are now have changed this direction to look at an existing capacity study. Staff looked at something different where they were looking at expansion and likely with their expertise have a sense of what that kind of study would look like. So in this case, we're making it up because we're focusing only on current system. So it's not to do with staff, that's council. I just learned that we had $65,000 already for long-term plans, so we don't even need to add in the amount. We could just leave it like staff wordsmith, so thank you for that.
Rob had his hand up.
Mr. Howitt? No, he's not speaking. Okay, so we have a motion here. Council directs staff to conduct a capacity study on the current wastewater system within the existing sewer specified area. Good? Moved, seconded. It's already been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Parkinson is opposed. So a question I have now that this is done, is this giving you some, it's not really giving you any direction on expansion. Well, I guess it is. It's saying that there's no look at expansion. But I think the point of it is, or my takeaway at it is to really understanding. I think that's the important piece for council. There hasn't been a lot of conversation, technically speaking, about the sewer in quite some time. So it's anyone's guess at this table as to what's really going on there, just given all the growth. I think once we understand where we're at, we can have a sense of where we go. So I know that isn't exactly what you brought forward, but I hope that it's something that can help steer this conversation at a later time. Okay. I guess the one question I would like to know is that before suites were allowed everywhere, there was a sewer generation fee. So the one residence, the primary paid a fee, and then there would be a second for a suite. And now in this case, with that not being known, I'd be curious at some point with this if there's a different way of calculating what a household's parcel tax is. Because if you have a couple, maybe one or two people living in one house, with suites and up to 8 or an Airbnb consuming far greater use on the system, it's not equal, and maybe something could be different, could be considered on water consumption once we know more information.
I think you said it right there. And we do know through the building permits where the suites are. We're not capturing all of them, obviously, but we are capturing the ones that are reporting that they've got a suite. And another way to do it would be water-based buildings, which we've already started exploring. It's something we know we can do. It's just we would have to obviously bring that forward to council and have a discussion around that.
Okay, so maybe that can come after we have, just be a good discussion to have. Okay, thank you very much, staff, for your report and your patience. Okay, so I need to just figure out exactly. Now I believe we are on 10.1. Blasting Regulation Bylaw Amendment. This has been brought forward by staff. I believe they found some inconsistencies here, so I'll turn this over to our staff, please, to our fire chief. Oh, Councillor Pearson, you had a question on this, or? Microphone isn't on.
I just noticed, with no disrespect to the chief, because I just noticed that we have a large number of people in the audience waiting for one item on our agenda. It's getting later, we're at 9:30 now.
Yeah, I know.
So I wonder if there's a way we could move something out of order.
We can. Maybe they're interested in blasting, considering that it's of impact to anyone that's living in this community.
I just know that it's getting late.
We're dealing with blasting,
Okay.
and then we're dealing with, were you referring to 11.1?
The Knox Church.
That's 11.1, so
Yes.
that would follow.
Yeah, sorry, 10.2, yes, okay, I'm fine.
Okay, that'll come right up next.
Thank you.
Okay. Back to our fire chief.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a short, easy one, just general housekeeping. This report showcasing a conflict between blasting regulation and the noise bylaw, and an amendment is being proposed. The current blasting regulation showcases that blasting can be done between 8 in the morning and 4:30 p.m., and the noise bylaw states that blasting can be done between 7 in the morning and 5 p.m. This contradiction is creating confusion, and we're recommending removing the time stamps from the regulation and just providing a reference to the bylaw. The benefits of this are standardization, consistency, less confusion, and better enforcement. My experiences with enforcement this summer showed that the blasting companies are definitely conscious of mitigating complaints. And when they were shut down during extreme fire dangers, they were definitely comfortable in making sure that they reduced hours and took all measures into account. So I don't see any problems with this amendment.
Okay, so just for my own clarity, because I'm confused again. So right now you can blast between 8 and 4:30, but the noise bylaw is from 7 to 5. So you're suggesting then that you can blast between 7 and 5 to make it the same as the noise bylaw?
The current reference in the noise bylaw says that you can blast between 7 and 5. So that's consistent with the other noise
I see.
Complaints. So we'll get a lot of confusion with the bylaw officer about if someone's blasting between 7 and 8:30.
I see. So that means all noise can be effective as between 7 and 5. Okay, got it. Councillor Casper, then Parkinson?
Through you. So my question is, what is the practice of the blasting companies? Do they start at 7 in the morning blasting, or do they start at 8? Because if they're starting at 8, my mind works this way. Make it 8 o'clock. If they start at 7 and have been, then it's 7. So, I just would like an answer.
Through to your chair, Councillor Casper, the complaints that I've seen coming in is confusion when there's blasting happening at 7. Most blasting companies have been, blasting when it's deemed best in the day. During extreme conditions this summer, they were blasting earlier in the morning to offset, extreme conditions in the afternoon and shutting down in the afternoon. So their preference is to be blasting earlier.
Councillor Parkinson?
Through your worship, it was along the same lines, except for I was preferring that it would be between the hours of 8 and 4:30, not the earlier hours, so that the people that are living there have a little bit more peace instead of being woken up really early. Thank you.
Other thoughts from members of council? Go ahead.
I would move the recommendation that we change the timings to be from 8 to 4:30.
So that would make it the same. We wouldn't need to do this.
Well, you have to change the other one because both of them are different, right?
But the other is for general noise.
Right, so it can be at 8 o'clock. Right?
But that would mean that anyone operating, well, even like a lawnmower would have to wait till 8 o'clock. So it's an hour difference in the short times of the year that I think, I don't know. Councillor Berger?
Yes, thank you. I see where the chief is coming from on this because we're just looking for consistency. Right now, we've got two bylaws that conflict each other. While I appreciate that 7 is a little bit early, if I think about construction crews that are trying to build and get houses built, the daylight savings time plays with us, and I think that hinders when people can work. We're looking at cutting an hour and a half off of construction time. And in the summer months, that doesn't mean a lot, but in the fall and winter, it does. And I think with the housing crisis that we're in now, and we are in a bit of a boom, I think that we shouldn't be conflicting our own bylaws, and I would support the chief's recommendation.
Okay, other thoughts? We have a bit of a back and forth here happening, so really it's a case of someone either... Did you make a motion? So Councillor Parkinson moved it with a later start time. Is there a seconder? 8 to 4:30.
And not 7 to 5.
Not 7 to 5. So there's no seconder for that. So it fails. So council could choose to give first reading, or you can just leave it as is. Move first reading by Councillor Berger and seconded by Councillor Casper. Discussion on that first reading. So this is aligning the times with all bylaws. I think as a courtesy, though, if any blasting company can notify the neighbors. I know in some areas they've been sounding an alarm. They've given dates and times. I think that works with residents. And get your blasting done and out of the way as quickly as possible. Yeah. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Councillor Parkinson is opposed. Someone moving second reading? Move second by Councillor Berger, seconded by Councillor Casper. Any further discussion on second reading? All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Parkinson opposed. Third by Councillor Casper and seconded by Councillor Berger. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Parkinson is opposed. And that's it. Okay. 11.1, 2110 and 2120, Church Road Development Permit and Development Variance Permit. I'll turn this to staff.
Point of order, there's actually one more bylaw, 10.2, in for final adoption. It's on your supplemental agenda.
Okay, I thought that would flow with new business.
It's a bylaw reading.
Okay, it's a bylaw reading, so if we could just get this bylaw adopted. Council adopt zoning amendment 681, 600-44. Moved by Councillor Casper and seconded by Councillor Pearson. All those in favor of adoption? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. 11.1. 2110 and 2120 Church Road. Turn it over to staff, please. We have your written report and your presentation. Thank you.
Good evening. The owner of this property has applied for a development permit to construct a 15-meter high building where the primary use will be a rental apartment. There will also be some commercial space, some cafe space, an indoor amenity space, all provided on the first or second floors of the building. The existing Knox Church and the cemetery will remain as uses on the property. The applicant has also applied for a development variance permit to reduce the setback from Church Road for the existing Knox Church from 2 meters to 0 meters. The two properties are zoned CD11, Knox Center Comprehensive Development Zone. The subject property falls within the town center, and the application has been evaluated against OCP's development permit area, number 1, which looks at form and character of a building. This is the proposed site plan for the building and parking layout. There will be a single vehicle access point from Church Road into the site. When analyzing the application, staff reviewed the building and the layout in accordance with the zoning bylaw and can confirm that all zoning requirements have been achieved for the proposed building, including screening, landscaping, and parking requirements. As per the zoning bylaw, the parking standards were reduced by 50%. This proposal includes 6 surplus parking spaces above the required 41 spaces, as well as 2 accessible parking stalls, bicycle storage, and the applicant has stated that more bicycle parking will be provided outside of the main entrances of the building. The applicant has proposed an exterior clad building with painted fiber siding, cement siding, and will be using colors that are warm and cheerful. The entrances to the proposed commercial unit and cafe space will be inset and covered to provide protection from the elements for pedestrians. This drawing shows the east and south elevations. And this is the landscaping plan that's proposed. It will include plants that are appropriate to the local climate, including shade-tolerant, native, and adaptive shrubs, ferns, and ornamental grasses. Overall, staff are satisfied that the form and character requirements in the OCP have been achieved through this application. Further to that, the application is consistent with the town center plan. Thank you, and the applicant is here tonight as well.
Just a question I have as we look at the landscaping plan. So there's Church Road, and then there's the trees and landscaping. And is that a sidewalk then? That's like, because there is already sort of an existing, so that would be preserved, right? Yes. Okay. All right. I just couldn't. Every time I zoomed in on this, it kind of disappears. So I just wanted to confirm, obviously, that people aren't walking on the road. Good, thank you. All right, no, that works for me. Councillor Parkinson?
Move recommendation that council issue a development permit PLN 01328 for the purpose of constructing a mixed-use commercial residential building located at 2110 and 2120 Church Road.
Seconded? Seconded by Councillor Pearson. On the motion, Councillor, do you have anything to say about that? Councillor Pearson, then?
Yes, thank you. The question I have is around this performance bond for the landscaping. Seems like an awful lot of money when this is being funded by our provincial government, that we have to secure a bond for another $143,000 in advance. I'm just asking the question, is that kind of normal, like for a government organization to have to supply a bond to us?
Yes. Through your worship, for development permits for form and character, with landscaping, they provide a landscaping estimate. And it is standard procedure to accept a bond, and then when the landscaping has been completed, the bond is returned.
Councillor Casper?
Yeah, I just have a question. Is it possible to ask the applicant if they have the funds available to actually put up this irrevocable letter of credit or to pay for bonding out of the budget that they've been allocated by the province?
No, we do not. They do not have the funding is the answer that...
We would have to go back to BC Housing and see if they would lend us.
Maybe they should come to...
Okay, you'll need to come to the microphone. We do have a motion, though, here, so we can deal with the first one. Why don't we clear this motion, because we can also deal with the performance bond in a separate motion. It's just when there's a motion on the floor, it sort of is with council now to discuss. It feels out of order to have the public speaking over the motion. Okay? You can amend it, though.
Yes.
Councillor Casper?
So I would make the following amendment, that the performance bond requirements be waived.
Okay, so that would be an amendment to this first. We've done just the first part. So after that last sentence, and the performance bond requirements be waived. Is there a seconder for that amendment?
Yes.
Seconded by Councillor Pearson. And speaking to the amendment, Councillor Casper.
So just to give comfort, is that this organization, Knox Church, they currently receive tax-free status Our policies say that if there's non-compliance with any requirements, whether it's a bylaw or any policy, that one's tax-free status would be lost. I doubt very much that the Knox Church people are going to walk away from performing all the landscaping because it's a provincially funded housing project, and the province is going to make sure that all these conditions are dealt with. So I'm willing to take that gamble with the church and with the provincial government that the landscaping will be done. I see a lot of heads nodding.
Well, I'm comfortable with the amendment. This is a not-for-profit. It is affordable, real, true, affordable housing that's desperately needed in our community, in the town center. It's been in the works for quite some time. And, I just think when we hear from the province that they want municipalities to do all they can to get housing in order, I think this is one thing that we can do. I think we would struggle with the group having to go back to BC Housing or the province to have that increased when there's not a competition, but when everyone is struggling to get as much affordable housing that they can. I think Councillor Casper's point that, and we've done this with other permissive tax exemptions, there is requirements that need to be met, or council can review that in a year's time. So I'm comfortable with the amendment.
Yep.
All right, so I'll call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? Is carried unanimously. Now on the main motion as amended, is there any further discussion on the main motion as it's amended? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously as well. The last part then is that council issue development variance permit PLN 01333 to vary section 811.6 of bylaw 600 SUP zoning bylaw 2013 to reduce the easterly lot line setback from 2 meters to 0 meters for the existing Knox Church building located at 2110 Church Road. Moved by Councillor Berger and seconded by Councillor Parkinson on the motion. Quickly, Councillor Casper.
Yes, so I just got to get my head around this. The reason why this is happening is because the district, and I'm saying council, made a requirement for additional property to be donated by this development to the district. So is it not possible that the property that is donated in front of the church not occur, so that there is no zero clearance and there is no reason to have a variance bylaw done? And I've looked at the lay of the land, and I look at the plans that were submitted, and the land that was taken, the church itself has really nothing to do with the development. You look at the development, and here's the big project. And so the church is separate from that. And, we took, and I drove by there tonight and had a look at it, and here's the sidewalk, and basically we've taken over some of their landscaped area that they have in front of the church right beside the sidewalk, and it runs right in front of the church. So I sort of look at this and think, well, if we didn't take the property, then we wouldn't have to go through this exercise. And maybe somebody can explain, is there a way that we can fix that problem so we don't have to go through all this? Because I think something could happen in the future, and I don't want to see this organization go through some problem that may arise when there's a brand new council or other people making decisions. And if we don't take the land, then we don't need to go through this exercise.
Is there any answer from staff on that?
Your Worship, the reason for the request for the land dedication, it was a condition of zoning from council, and the reason for the land dedication was for potential future highway requirements, upgrades, etc. At this point in time, I would not have a problem working with the Knox Church people and eliminating the need for the dedication in and around the church area. I can deal with that and their surveyor.
Okay, so in that case, we can actually just strike that second motion, and we'll just leave it for staff to work out with the applicant. Okay, we don't need that motion then. So we're good. We're done on that matter. So thank you, everyone, for your patience. We do look forward to seeing this come to life, and I hope that you'll keep us up to date on how your plans are progressing with it. It's very exciting. We already moved this one and seconded.
Just a simple question: by removing that, does that mean we get our $500 back? Well, I think so.
I think our staff will sort that out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're out of order, sir, but thank you for your patience. Okay, so thank you everyone for your time. But council, we still need to flow through, so just take a moment to clear the chambers, and if you could please just take any conversations you have down the stairs, please, just so we can continue moving on. Okay, so where am I here? 12.1.
Where'd Teresa go?
Actually, no, that's for that.
She went out like 3 times.
11.3, Your Worship.
We are on 11.3 in the yellow pages. We have support letter for reestablishment of Section 17 Reserve Designated Use Area.
What? Oh.
This has come forward to us from the Ministry of Forest, Lands and National Resources. And you see that in here on page 19 of the report. And they're looking for a letter, and it's about continued support for our harbor and basin, which seems in order for us. So I'm looking for council. We want to provide a letter of support on this matter.
Move recommendation.
Move the recommendation by Councillor Parkinson. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Casper. For discussion, anything, Councillor Parkinson? Go to seconder, Councillor Casper.
Maybe I missed something in the correspondence, but is there actually a request from the ministry here saying they want it to get changed to 10 years? Because I couldn't find it in the package. I saw the original one, and it was for 5 years, and the one that's there, from what I could read, and it's pretty faint ink, it was for a 5-year opportunity. So are we doing a further 5 years? Because I don't see anything here that specifically asks for it to be 10 years. And was there additional correspondence?
Okay, do we have an answer for that? 5 years, 10 years?
Excuse me, Your Worship, I was just getting some clarification. Apparently, it came from Front Counter BC directly to our planner, and it should have been attached here, but for some reason it is not. But it did come through as a formal request.
For 10 years.
Front Counter BC and Nanaimo through FLNRO.
Okay. So, Councillor, are you comfortable with that?
5 minutes.
Good? Okay, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. 11.3. 12.1. 2018 to 2022 Financial Plan Timeline. So we have had this conversation before, and so glad to see this up in front of us. This gives us a timeline. The only thing that sort of I struggle with a bit is in the timeline, because the assessment authority revised roll doesn't come out till April of 2018, then that leaves us with not passing the first, second, and third reading until after that, so like April 23rd, 2018. Does that mean then that staff can't start on any projects till after the bylaw is read?
Your Worship, Excuse me. We will get some preliminary assessment information in November.
Okay.
This one is just to get the financial plan bylaw approved. So we can do that before the end of the year if council wishes. And then the tax rate bylaw is when we need the rest of the information from BC Assessment. That's the one that happens later.
Okay,
Yep.
but so, because the idea of starting the budget planning early was so that staff could hit the ground running like early and have the benefit of a full calendar year as opposed to a partial year. So this would still allow that to occur.
Yeah,
then?
that's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
The sooner we can get this the budget through, we do have an existing 2017 to 2021 plan that does have an approved 2018 year in it, but of course there's going to be some changes, and there has been changes. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so this all sounds great. Other questions from members of council? Move receipt by Councillor Berger. Seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Councillor Casper?
So during this October 25th process, is it possible to make it abundantly clear to the public who may decide to show up that council has not officially adopted expenditures for 2018, and that what is outlined in the 5-year financial plan is subject to change? Because I don't want the public to be there with preconceived ideas that we've actually given our blessing to this. Does that make sense?
Yep. I think that is straightforward. The one request I have from staff is on our homepage. There's 3 sections, and the one in the middle is council activities, and it says municipal calendar. So if you click on that, it'll show sort of you get the month of October here. I think if it's there, that needs to be up to date because some special meetings haven't been on that calendar. And then like the Talktober event is not on here. So it's just like everyone uses our website. Like we have so many different ways for people to access information and everyone is looking at it differently. But because it's there, it needs to be up to date. So if you could just look at it, it's right there. It's a municipal calendar and I would just plug in all of these dates knowing that once you do that, you'll have to go and revise them too. But because it's either we use it, or take it off completely. Sound good? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And thank you for the Talktober event. It goes over very well every year. Well, this will be year 2. 12.2, permissive tax exemptions. We actually have on this in our agenda here that council receive the permissive tax exemption report for information. However, we do need to move 3rd reading. So perhaps council, you want both of those motions or can it just be 3rd reading?
It can just be the report should be received because it talks about the other application.
Okay.
And then 3rd reading, assuming you do not want to make any more changes, or give 3rd reading as amended if you would like more changes based on the application that's in the report.
Okay, so I'll turn this to council then to receive. The first part then is to receive.
Second.
So moved receipt by Councillor Berger and seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Discussion on receipt for information. See none. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. And then the next would be to move 3rd reading.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Casper and seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Councillor Pearson. There is a...
So now that we've received the additional information...
We need to amend.
Yes.
Right.
I would propose that we amend to include the...
You just need to say...
Step to the future.
You could just say that council give 3rd reading as amended. Give 3rd reading to the bylaw as amended. Okay, so is the mover and seconder fine with that? I think that was the intent because you received the report without question. Okay, All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried unanimously as well. Thank you for flagging that. 13.1, Amazon support letter. So we've heard from a member of the public who came, who's a local business owner and spoke to us about this, and it's also on your very last page of the report. I think the points made were very valid, and I think beyond that, it's also supporting a neighboring community who has supported us in our initiatives as well.
Second.
Moved to send a letter by Councillor Casper and seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Anything further on the motion? Councillor Pearson?
Yes. I think that this, even though I agree 100% with the speaker, I don't think there's risks in there. I think this is something that you stand up and you say that's exciting. There's a huge potential. You know, we all know how I earn my other living, and the company that's, you know, potentially poised to rule the world, as everyone says, potentially locating here and creating jobs and an economy is exciting for our region. But what it does is it speaks to the region itself being that draw. You know, if you looked at isolation of Langford only having 40,000 people and potentially putting 50,000 jobs there, you know, the math doesn't add up. But when we look at it as a region, Southern Vancouver Island, and Amazon, Jeff Bezos, we know, is a very unconventional thinker and looks outside the box. So I think it's extremely exciting for our area to even if we're not successful, we're getting ourselves on the map as a region that we're open for any kind of technological business and something that's there. So very exciting, and I'm very happy to support this.
Excellent. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you for hanging out. It's exciting. Come on. This is good stuff happening here. Okay, 14, correspondence. We have correspondence from September the 14th to October the 2nd. There was just a couple of pieces that I wanted to flag. There was a meeting request, I think September 20th, from Ms. Linda Lucas, so I'll follow up with her to arrange that meeting.
Okay.
And I think that was it, unless someone wants to pull. Councillor Parkinson?
I was going to pull the same one from Linda Lucas plus Mark Moldovan. His is about the water going out to Pasco Road as well.
That was
so we're
the other
getting
one.
a lot of requests, so we really should have that discussion.
Okay, so we'll pull those out for now, and then there's the rest of the pieces on the block.
Mm-hmm.
So move receipt on the other correspondence from September 14 to October 2nd.
Move receipt.
Moved by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Pearson. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. So going back to the email from Ms. Linda Lucas, is that content that I will follow up on her request for a meeting?
Absolutely.
Or actually, if staff could assist me in booking that so that I don't forget, please. Thank you. And then the other piece was, sorry, what date was that, Councillor
20th,
Parkinson?
right underneath Lucas with the water, you mean?
Yes, that's
September
right.
20th.
So I think what we need to do is just have a bit of a conversation about water in general. Because even from our earlier conversation today, we're all understanding something a little bit different. And I think it's just something so that we're all on the same page. So if we could do that, I don't think would you like a motion? Or can we just follow up on that?
If you can direct staff to come back with a report for you, we'd be happy to do so.
So I'd like council then to direct staff to bring back a report on water service to Souk. Let's just leave it at that.
Motion.
Moved by Councillor Parkinson. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Pearson. And from that we can talk about how the role of the commission, the role of the water Fuqua distribution, the arbitration that's in place right now, where pipe water goes, where our OCP works and where it fails right now, and what we need to consider for the next OCP. Okay? Excellent. Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Opposed? That's carried unanimously as well. Thank you. Cannabis legalization, 14.1. There's a letter here from Minister Farnsworth. interesting piece to share is that with my role on the UBC executive, I have been appointed to the provincial technical working group that will be working directly with the province on how distribution handles. People may ask, why are we even involved? This is a federal issue. Yes, the federal government makes a determination on being it legal. The province still controls distribution. Until the new government came in, there's nothing has been done yet, and the July timeline is ticking very quickly. So that's why the UBCM already knew this, so they already had plans in place, but it wasn't until the new government formed that they actually had the province at the table with this working group. So a lot of work has already happened, but now it will happen with the province, and I will be on that technical working group, so can give you updates along the way, because that will certainly impact what's happening within our community. So for now, there's just a motion to receive this for information. Councillor Berger?
Yeah, I just have a question. Councillor Pearson and I attended, when we were at UBCM, we went to the half-day workshop on the whole legalization of recreational cannabis. And it talked about pretty much everything that you said, but I wrote down some notes that I thought were really important, especially for all of us municipalities that have dispensaries in our communities.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that, and honestly, I left that workshop feeling a little bit disappointed. There's no legal framework really from the federal government. They're going to download it onto the provincial government, then the provincial government will download it onto the municipal government. So the one biggest thing that came across to me was the wait and see approach isn't the right approach. We're going to be left behind the 8 ball. So I think this, we need to have direction for this to come back to another council meeting so we can have a fulsome discussion on it. We need to look at our zoning bylaw to determine whether the sales of recreational cannabis will fit within our commercial zones or whether it's not going to, because dispensaries are going to be under our own local jurisdiction. So there's so many. The sign bylaw has to need to be addressed. They also spoke about growing and selling. What does that look like? That said the federal government will not set standardized regularization or legislation for all provinces and local governments. Municipalities need to clearly state the difference between growing for medical and then growing for recreational. So that's got to be 2 separate issues. And that's going to be all put on, as you know, the municipality's shoulders. So I took pages and pages and pages of notes. I won't read them all. Yeah, sure, I can send them to you. I think for me, when I read the discussion paper, it brings up a lot of information. Most of which sort of what I wrote down, but I think that this has to come back to our table so Sue can actually have a voice in it. I can let Councillor Pearson speak too, but one thing that also rang through to me in that workshop was that they're taking a step back a little bit at UBCM because they do want to hear from local governments. They said that they want to push through and say, okay, BC is 19 legal age, so we should make it 19, even though the feds say 18. But they're really wanting to hear from local governments, and they really want local governments to receive this, but then send back their opinion of what they plan to do and what this could look like in their municipality. So I would really like us to communicate back to UBCM by way of official, even statements or points that we make on what this is going to look like for Souk. As we all know, the southern Vancouver Island is a fantastic place to grow cannabis. So I think that we need to get one step ahead of it and look at what is it going to look like for our community. So that would be my suggestion, is that we can receive and file the discussion paper, but I'd like to bring it back for full discussion so we can then present our position on it.
Yeah, we can do that, because that's only 2 pages. That doesn't say much. Like, there's nothing. Only the UBCM has been working on this. The province has done nothing, and the feds have basically dumped it completely on local government because the province said, okay, we're not dealing with this, and it's just gone completely through. So it's only because of the work that the UBCM has done is this even...
Yeah, absolutely.
And it completely falls on us, from enforcement to everything.
I'll take all of my pages of notes and make them legible, so then when we do bring this back, we can have discussions on really what is going to be on our shoulders, which is obviously going to be a ton.
Yep. Okay. So motion to receive. We'll do this one first. You're speaking on receiving for information?
Yes, but...
yes, but no?
No. Yes, but no.
And speak to the motion, and then, because we can make another motion.
Well, I am, but we're also talking about, are we going to be talking about a staff report that's coming on October 23rd?
No. They
So, no, but it says here, it says staff report forthcoming at October 23rd, 2017, regular meeting of council. So if it's not going to happen then, and if we're receiving this information, and Councillor Berger is going to give some information to our staff, then I would like to pass on some additional information too.
We have to have this either on the 23rd or the following week, because
Right.
the submission is due by November 1st.
Exactly.
So
that's why I'm raising it right now. And you know, I would sooner give staff food for thought. And my kind of food for thought is this. Currently, the BC government with liquor distribution locations, it's got to be so many feet from schools, or meters, and then the distance between any distribution places has to be so many meters, and it's to have, you know, kind of an area where there isn't any, so it doesn't conflict with another. And then there's the question of dispensaries, whether it's going to be in a pharmacy or through some regulatory authority similar to a liquor control branch approved operation. But I think it has to be noted that there's a couple of issues here. That once it becomes legal, then there's all the new testing devices that will have to be brought in to deal with impairment. I don't want to see our taxpayers bear the cost of all this additional equipment, because to me, that just isn't right. The other thing is that I don't want to see our police force deal with the regulatory enforcement aspect of these agencies, and if the province is going to get directly involved, then they use the same model that's similar to liquor distribution. They have their own inspectors, they have all these people.
Councillor Casper, if I may, we're just receiving this part for information. When I looked at this,
I just don't want to get lost.
I know, but that's where when I looked at this, we were looking on October 23rd to meet a November 1st timeline. So that'll give more opportunity for us to give comments. But in the meantime, I would suggest anyone that takes notes or has anything forwards them to staff. So I'm calling the question on this first part. All those in favor of receipt? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Our fire chief had his hand up.
Your Worship, I'm planning to present this report at the next council meeting with all the information gathered here. It's currently being fabricated, and I have the report going through my staff. And our recommendation is actually to defer it to November 1st because there'll be more information coming and a lot more to add to the report.
Okay, well, we can't wait till, it has to be submitted by November the 1st at 4 p.m. And so I think that's a Wednesday anyway. So this will make October 30th. It's still cutting it too close a bit for council, though, because we won't get the report until the Thursday, and then anything that we would want to amend. So I would try to push it to the 23rd if you can.
If I may, Your Worship, we have had UBCM deadlines before, and if you make a call to UBCM and the administration there, they're likely to accept it a few days late to provide our council with an opportunity to have a fulsome discussion about this, but it'll also provide staff an opportunity to get that information from members of council and add it to what we've already got.
But it's not, if I may, it's not a UBCM deadline. It's a provincial deadline on a letter that they sent out at September 21st and then brought to UBCM on something that was announced quite some time ago. So I appreciate the timing, but I just think that we should just try to meet the deadline because this isn't a new issue. The fact that the province hasn't done anything, but municipalities have been aware for this for quite some time, since we had the medicinal ones show up and now the feds announced their regulations. So I think all effort needs to be made to meet the deadline. It's not a UBCM deadline.
My apologies. It's much of the times when we find these deadlines, they are certainly set arbitrarily. And, you know, I could definitely phone the province to see if we can have a couple of extra days to do so. My worry is that how legislation flows is from the federal government to the provincial government to municipalities, because we have to follow the provincial legislation, and we don't yet know what that's going to be. So we can make a couple of assumptions, as Councillor Casper referred to, which is the pharmaceuticals and liquor distribution branches. So staff will have to make some assumptions without having provincial legislation there. So I just need to make that clear to members of council that if we get the report on the 23rd or if we get it on the 30th, it's still going to be full of assumptions that we know what the provincial government is going to do or not do.
Well, I totally get that. It's just this is all BC municipalities submitting, so they already might have a plan. They may not even listen to what Suk has to say in the whole scheme of things. Right? So I just think we do our best and get it in on that deadline, and then our part has been done. So, okay? Let's try to have it on the 23rd. All right, moving on. Okay, council reports. I only have 3 things to share. Very positive meeting with the Minister of Health, which has confirmed the province's appreciation of our work for our health facility, and that they have joined the table in that conversation, and Island Health has as well. I had a meeting with their officials on Friday. A steering group will be formed to look at both short and long-term plans for our community, and a lot of this further discussion will occur at the Primary Health Working Group this coming Thursday, which is very exciting. But it's a major step forward because basically that brings everyone to the table. There will be a stakeholder engagement meeting held some week for the first week in November, because the plan is to have something completed by the end of November to go forward in January for an April implementation date. So it's very exciting news for that. Also met with the Minister of Transportation. The corridor study that I thought was completed still is not fully completed, so they assured me it would be done this fall. I'll also be following up with her on some short in-town improvements that I think are needed. Some of the work with the roundabout, in my opinion, was not fully completed, and I've had conversations with staff, so we'll be sending follow-up letters on that. Councillor Loggins and I also had a very brief meeting with the Minister of Education to talk about our schools. That followed on a meeting that I had with our school trustees right before UBCM. So we'll be continuing to meet with the Minister of Education and our schools that are completely over capacity. So there are a lot of other pieces, but those are the 3 highlights. And at least in this case, I actually have the possibility of meeting with ministers, which I didn't have before. So that's a big plus for us. So I'll leave it at that. Councillor Berger, please. Then Pearson.
Yes, thank you. I'll keep mine very short and quick, too. The only update through Sea Park is that the golf course is going to be open until October 15th, so there's 5 more days to enjoy Demaniel Golf Course. And then at UBCM, I attended tons of different sessions. I won't get into all of them. Councillor Pearson and I, on the Mayor's behalf, met with Ministry of Transportation, with Colwood Mayor and Langford Mayor. They invited us, it was their meeting, just to talk about Highway 14 and what it looks like for economic growth in our community. And I felt like it was a good meeting. I think we'll have to follow up and get more towards the Suk end of it, but I felt like it was a good meeting for us to meet regionally to talk about the need for improvements along Highway 14.
Councillor Pearson.
Thank you. Through the chair, is that we got to meet with ministers. We attended various meetings at UBCM that I thought were very interesting. The couple of common themes that I picked up on throughout the different sessions was the affordable housing throughout the province and the issues around that landscape with prices continuing to escalate. It was interesting to listen to Tofino talking about, and Councillor Berger and I attended that session as well, about their trying to impose bylaws on people on their Airbnbs and all of these things that are going on, and reducing the rental stock for regular people. So it's a crisis that's expanding throughout the province, and it was a common theme throughout. So I think it's something that we need to pay attention to because the prices are escalating, beyond belief. We heard tonight about, affordable housing. We only have land to export in Souk, and the average price of Langford, I don't know if anybody noticed, hit $710,000 last week, the average selling price of Langford. So, that's becoming unreachable for a big percentage of the population, particularly younger people. So the UBCM I found was very, very informative and some good things. The last piece that I'll talk about is that I attended the Wandafuka Water Commission meeting last week. Good news is we used less water than they predicted. The bad news is that means we have to make up the shortfall with the water rate increase. So it's so counterintuitive that you save water and yet you got to pay for the services. Interesting dilemma hitting the West Shore and to the mayor and Councillor Casper, who are sitting on the bigger board. The bigger board is struggling, or the West Shore is struggling with their development and the need for more water and big projects coming online. Skirt Mountain, Bear Mountain, Royal Bay, all of these big projects where this enormous amount of infrastructure goes into the ground in advance. One of the challenges for the utilities model is that this big infrastructure goes into the ground. It belongs to Wandafuka Water Supply or the CRD water once it's installed in the ground. Well, the customer payout may be 20 years out. They actually may not be receiving revenue for the full build-out for 20 years. So there's a cost to that infrastructure. So the current utility model of selling water to customers isn't paying for the infrastructure that goes into the ground at the right time. So they're struggling with that. So Bob Lapham, the CEO for the CRD, was there. We talked about just different models of funding some of that growth, but tremendous growth coming at us in the Western communities, and the water to supply that is a huge challenge. So anyways, that's all I wanted to say about that. So bad news is that, good news, we're selling less or we're using less water. Bad news is going to cost us more. So thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Casper.
Yeah, really short. I just, in my role as liaison with the age-friendly seniors group, I had a meeting 2 weeks ago with the seniors on a few issues, and I'm attending a meeting tomorrow. And there may be a delegation and a presentation made by this group. I'm not going to get into the details about what they're proposing, but I'm working with them, not taking a position, but when asked for how business is done and how they can approach council, I've been advising accordingly. So I've just given you advance notice. Thank you.
Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship, I will give a more detailed report next time. I left my paperwork at home, but I attended the Royal and McPherson theatre sessions. I've been to 2 of them already, and I would say that all 13 municipalities are there at the table discussing what's happening with both theaters and where they're going to. So I'll bring back the report once I hear about it. And I also attended UBCM, went to a minister conference with the mayor and the CAO. And when you were talking about for Airbnbs, it was a really interesting conversation with the woman that looks after it. And they had the stats on Souk, and Souk has 55 Airbnbs registered in our town with them, so they know exactly where they are, what they're doing, what they're charging. So those are the ones that are registered, so there's probably a lot more that aren't registered. So I thought that was pretty interesting too. So thank you.
Another conversation on the Airbnbs, because I think we have well over 100 of them in our community. All right, thank you, councillors. We're always pressed for time with this, so we may need to think of a better format. Okay, notices of motion. So we have 2. We'll start with the first one. So this was introduced at the last meeting, and it would require a seconder to go forward. So that is that council receive all information from all delegations and not make any decisions or motions on the matter at hand, that staff be instructed to provide council with a report for the next regular council meeting. So Councillor Parkinson, you're likely moving that. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Pearson. So would you like to speak to it, Councillor Parkinson? Microphone, sorry.
Through your worship, while I realize this may cause a delay for certain businesses or people coming forward, it is extremely important that council make their decisions and that they're based on an understanding of all the relevant facts. And sometimes I think that we put ourselves into a position where we really don't want to be. And I think that if we take time to think about what we're doing and to bring it to the next council meeting, I don't find that to be such a hardship. So I would like to see that
Councillor Pearson.
That we received.
Microphone.
Okay. While I agree in concept, I think that a blanket approach, like, and Councillor Parkinson, when you made the motion, I understand it. It's difficult because sometimes there's a sense of urgency or there's something that council has to act on. So I guess that I like the idea and I like the concept because it's probably how government should work. Is more information the better. But I don't want it to take over for those situations where I think a decision needs to be made. So I support the idea and the concept. I just don't know how to execute it from a tactical point of view. That was my concern.
Councillor Berger, then back to Parkinson.
I respectfully disagree. And I do so because I think that there are things of a timely nature. I totally understand the point of view that you're coming from, because I think there are lots of situations where we make motions on the fly and maybe we do have a sober second thought and then it becomes a bigger issue than it needs to. But tonight, for example, we made a motion on the fly to host Communities in Bloom. So they happen. There's things that, and it was your motion, but it
wasn't a delegation.
I'll give you an opportunity to respond.
And I only bring that up because there are those things. We had information in our reader file. It was something we'd done in the past. There are always going to be those things that could be of a timely nature that maybe we could just do. So to blanket and say that we don't ever do that, I respectfully disagree. I do think that in the past, yes, we've made errors in that field.
Councillor Parkinson, then Casper.
In regards to your comments, Councillor Berger, the Communities in Bloom was in our package. We actually got to read the information. We actually know what it's about. It's not about a delegation sitting up at a table and then telling us and not giving us any information and then saying, yeah, you can have $500 for your fishing charter, or you can have this. Like, we don't take anything of that into consideration. And we all sit around this table and we all say, we're not making decisions on the fly. And we consistently do. And when it's delegations and we don't have the background information on it, I think that we should take time to do that. And I just wanted to say that right after that meeting, after these motions were made, the last meeting, one gentleman replied, "Can't believe no one addressed this sort of thing until now, but it certainly makes good sense." And then the other person had to say, "I think she must be suffering from Parkinson's disease." So there you go. There's both sides to the issue.
It's a very unkind comment. Councillor Casper.
Yes, I do appreciate the concerns and the comments, but I've always felt that when you're elected to make decisions, and you shouldn't have rules that impede the rights of council to make decisions at any time. Council has the right to waive any policy. Council has the right to waive a bylaw. There are steps and procedures where council can actually move business forward at any time. I just find that there have been situations where, when we've been approached by a group or an organization or an individual, where a compelling story has been told, then we've taken what was presented as being factual. And I've always subscribed to this. I try to take everything I hear from everybody in this room in good faith. And so I make my decisions based on that. And I just don't want to see us embark in a program that's actually going to deny my right to make a decision at the meetings that I attend when someone comes to me, a group, a business, or whoever, and wants us to take action. And sometimes it's important to take action. So, I could appreciate a little more information, especially from delegations. I agree with all of that, but I just don't want to see my hands tied in making a decision after getting all that information. So.
Okay. Councillor Pearson?
Last comment I'll make is that, and I want to thank you, Councillor Parkinson, for saying, because I think sometimes we forget about that, and even though I may not support this motion, I think it will slow me. It will slow me down sometimes to realize. I think you bringing it forward. I may support it. I may not. I haven't made up my mind yet. But I think it does bring to light that sometimes we need more information, and that we don't have the best information when we're making these decisions. I don't think it's an out of line motion. I appreciate the discussion. So thank you.
Okay, Councillor Parkinson, final comment?
Final comment.
Final comment.
Final comment. So, with this motion...
Technically, you're only allowed to speak twice, so I'm giving you a third time.
Oh, I should have spoken longer then.
Exactly.
Yes. So, I think that if we have delegations coming forward and they're presenting, then we should have the information that they're presenting ahead of time. And if we don't have that information ahead of time, then we shouldn't be voting on it. They know what they're talking about. They go up there, they tell us their story. We have no idea whether it's factual. You may take everybody as being honest and decent. I tend to not go that way too much and wonder what everybody wants. But to be able to make an informed decision, you need to have the information in front of you.
So my only comment is the one, so for today we had a delegation, and then I realized that there was materials handed out to us. And so I felt, okay, this is a delegation, because in the website, and this is no different than many of the delegations we received. There's a one-page submission with a heading that here's what they're coming to talk about, and then they hand out a pile of materials for us to read. Well, I just feel like if I sat here and read through this, I would be criticized for not listening, because I cannot read and listen at the same time. I cannot multi-think or task in that way. I need to read something and then I need to listen. So I either listen and then I don't read any of this. And so I think it's a valid point with this that, and I know that staff really pushed, are you having a PowerPoint? Are you doing a presentation? You have 5 minutes only. And I try to keep time, and very rarely do people stay within that time. And then, and so I'm trying to get through the meeting, and then it's the case council has questions, an hour goes by, and we haven't even hit the regular meeting that everyone has sat patiently for us to get to, and staff time has gone into, and they're all waiting because somebody is sort of coming in at the top, bringing in piles of information that council makes a decision on. I'm going to use the word transparency. I know we all love that word over and over and over again, but I think the public has a right to know how we are making a decision. What materials are you looking at? What materials are each of you flipping at? Are we all looking at the same thing? Are we all arriving at the decision of the same thing? Because with this material today, for example, it's not on the website. Nobody's seen it. It's only now, staff doesn't even have it. It's only now just entering the record, and then we're here to make a decision on it. So I agree with the motion. I think it's one way to start the process, and that if there is something timely, then it's just looking. The agenda schedule is approved a year at a time in advance. And council, as it can with anything, as said, can waive the policy as needed. So anyway, in the essence of moving on, I'm calling the question. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Councillor Pearson, Casper, and Berger are opposed, so the motion fails. But I think it gives pause to ponder and to think. We're not talking about this anymore. We're moving on to the next motion. But you're more than welcome to give a notice of motion in writing. We still have 2 more items to get through, and it's after 10:35 now. So the next one is that council not receive any supplementary information or additional information at the start of any council meetings. The information is pertinent to an agenda item. That item should be tabled to the next council meeting for discussion so that council has sufficient time to read the information. So Councillor Parkinson has moved that. Is there a seconder?
Oh, come on.
I will second it for discussion purposes.
Okay. So,
speak to it, Councillor Parkinson.
In order to make an informed decision, you must be able to digest all of the information you've received. This cannot be done when you are handed a package at the time of the council meeting. Not too long ago, we had a package placed in front of us before the meeting, which was 40 pages. The public sees that, and they're wondering what you're going to do with it. You haven't even opened it or looked at it, yet you're going to vote on something. So I find it really uncomfortable to have pages placed in front of me that I cannot read, and I'm expected to make a decision.
So my only challenge with this is that often the agenda is posted and then other material relevant to an item starts to come through. I mean, like a public hearing, up until the hearing closes, people can continue to make written and verbal submissions, and that is their right to do so. So I struggle a bit with that. Council, though, also has the right to table anything at any given time. So you could always just move it to the next agenda, postpone it indefinitely, table it right to the end, table it to the next meeting. So there is that ability. But I totally agree with it because we get it. And then I know that it comes out online, but you may or may not have the opportunity to read it. And then you're sitting here reading, not listening, like you are right now. For example. Yeah. Councillor Berger, then Pearson, please.
Again, I'm going to respectfully disagree, only because for public hearings was one point I was going to bring up. When we receive additional information, we have to receive that information. Sometimes there's pertinent information as well that sort of comes in that day. But I did want to add that in our new technology ages, August 14th, September 11th, September 18th, all new supplemental business is posted at 2 o'clock in the afternoon that day. So I know that that is a challenge, but it is posted online and through Granicus at 2 o'clock. So today it wasn't, but in meetings of the past, it does get posted. So that means people at home can read it, I can read it, we all can read it on our computers.
You can subscribe, you can input your email, and then anytime new stuff comes, you automatically get it emailed. Well, that's not helping the situation.
But we received 27 pages today. That's just put in front of us.
Yeah.
Like, one time over 40 pages.
Okay.
Like, this is insane.
Councillor-
And I know, I understand about the meetings and stuff where you have to public hearings and that, where you receive the letters. That's fine. But when we get a whole bunch of information on something where you don't have the time to read it and you're to make an informed decision, it's impossible to do that.
Councillor Pearson.
Well, it's interesting.
Microphone.
After you made this motion, I went and read the community charter about public hearings. And public hearings is till the start of the meeting. You can receive any information up to the start of the meeting, and the purpose of the meeting is for receiving any pertinent information. So somebody can come to a public hearing and hand it out to you. That's in the charter, in the community charter. So it's kind of difficult. We couldn't enact this. We would be in violation of the community charter. The way I read it. So I mean, it's convoluted because it's like you think our agendas are thick. You should read that thing. Anyways.
Okay. I'll call the question then.
One last.
Quickly.
So when we receive our information, right? When the public brings it forward, we don't have to make a decision at a public hearing on what we're going to do. So we can receive that information, digest it, and then make the decision later. So that's not hindering anybody that way.
Some municipalities actually close the public hearing and don't move third reading until the next council meeting. So that does happen, but I just think, yeah, it gives time for things to think in, but at the same time, I think there's also, let's just kind of move on with some things at the same point. So I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Only Brenda.
Opposed? Councillor Pearson, Casper, Berger, and the mayor are opposed, but I think, again, it's excellent decision. Now, there's also one more notice of motion to be introduced at this meeting, and that is from Councillor Berger, and she did supply it in writing, and that is to direct staff to reinstate the 48-hour building permit application. So that's just here for notice, and then that'll come forward on next council meeting's agenda. So on that cheerful note, all in favor of adjournment at 10:43? Or actually, sorry, I need to move it first. Councillor Berger and seconded by Councillor Pearson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We made it through this meeting.
If I can ask everyone, we're still streaming, so if we can